record, and then we will go live on YouTube because, we deserve it. Welcome, Wade. We're going to go live on YouTube right now, and I believe we're live right now. So why don't I say the welcoming morning welcome, as I often do. Welcome to Hash Church 3.0, episode 13 today. Starting it off with Wade and Etienne already in the room. How about that? So
I believe we are live.
Oh, you believe it, buddy. Here, let me just share this in the other chat so we can get our crew, because for whatever reason, the way Zoom works now is it doesn't let me go live from the actual video, the link that I put up on YouTube. It used to do that, but now it starts a whole new link. So there's 80 people in the other chat room and they're kind of like, what's going on here? All right, there we go. Let's let in Mr. Mark. We're going to talk about Mark's cultivar today early because Mark didn't get to talk last week because Hash Church, we're aggressive talkers. You gotta really get in there if you want to have something to say.
True that.
True that. Welcome, Wade. It's nice to see your smiley face.
Feeling really good this morning, Marcus. Right back at you and Etienne. Hello, sir.
Amazing how you feeling good is noticeable on your face and is making me feel good.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. Oh, it's the truth. I can't deny it. I cannot deny it. Hey, welcome, Mark. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How's it going, guys?
It's going good. I like you got your Hash Church hoodie on there.
Yeah. Rocking that out this morning. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yes, of course. I felt bad last week. We didn't talk about the Hash Church. We did have a great Hash Church episode, though, and I think that was the problem. There was just so much to talk about, and it was pulling us into the mushroom. And once the mushroom gets a hold of you, well, that's usually 5 or 6 hours before it lets go. So, but we got you back today. I'm not sure who's going to come in today. It might be kind of a small Hash Church. It might be a big Hash Church. Last week, I sent the link through Facebook, but some of the people in that link didn't receive it. Dr. Mark Scialdone said he didn't receive the link, which I haven't figured out how that is, because there's two groups. I send out emails to certain groups. Wade, for instance, is on the emails, and then I do Facebook Messenger invites as well, of which most of the rest of you guys probably would have gotten your link that way. Welcome, Johnny B. Maybe Johnny B can't hear yet. Welcome, Johnny B.
Johnny, can you come out and play?
Ooh, is that a Warriors reference?
Yeah.
I figured. Isn't it come out to play?
Come out to play. Yeah.
There we go. Well, nice to sit with you guys this morning. I think, like I said, I kind of put it together last minute. I would prefer to just do any old Hash Church just to keep it consistent. That's what kind of everyone's looking for right now in these crazy times that we're living in. And I just figured, you know what, even if we got together for a couple of hours and shot the shit, puffed some bowls and talked a little bit about the Hash Church cultivar and some other things, I figured we'd be good. Yeah, Johnny's trying to configure his audio by looking at his shelf. He's just like, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck? He'll figure it out.
It's usually a setting in your Zoom, though. You have to, sometimes it automatically switches your audio to your mic if you have an external mic. So you have to switch it to your internal audio.
I just switched it to my Yeti. So is it working now?
Lima Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah, Colin's hitting me up saying he can't find the link, and I just sent it to the email, so everyone should have gotten it on that email. That is very
I saw it.
strange.
It was a little bit hard to find, but this morning was easy. Thank you.
Okay, good. We always want to make it easy. We don't want to make it hard, but I'm going to send it out again just in case.
I need to go get a pipe.
Just in case.
I have 3 computers going. I didn't know which one to hit. So garage, living room, or the office.
Johnny B! I hear you.
Good. Okay. So now I'm going to hit mute. So I don't.
Johnny B and Collin P. Collin P.
Morning, Collin.
Never really saw the connection between Johnny B and Collin P, but now I'll never be able to unsee it. It's just how life is.
If only Collin had a keyboard, just one keyboard.
Yeah, exactly. If he had a keyboard, he could make it all work, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Any...
I have none. I don't know what these things do behind me.
one of these days, you're gonna have to rip us a tune, is what you're gonna have to do, because
I will.
We've been watching you in that room for like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yep, it's true.
It's just a fake background, right?
It's one of those fake. Right. It's funny because I have 2 drum kits here, and I've been collecting instruments since I was maybe a teenager when I first started, moving some stuff. It was a good way to put my energy into other things. So,
i.e., launder your cash.
No, I don't.
I'm just joking.
It's a positive experience.
Oh, Hash Church jokes for sure. Listen, today we're starting by talking about the Hash Church cultivar that Mark Hallet, who's in the room right now, hit me up with a while ago. He first hit me up with that infamous picture, which I wish I kind of had it on my computer right now. And maybe I do. Let me see. Oh, I do. I can just share my screen. Look at that. So this was kind of the picture that started it all off for me, and how we're going to get into this conversation. And Mark's going to talk, and we're going to have to, give him some patience because he's kind of new at these Hash Church things. So there you go. That is what started it all. Now,
so plant porn. You got some plant porn, and that started it all up.
Some plant porn, right? And, lots of people were like, oh, is that the hooked trichome cultivar? I don't see, I don't see the heads as clearly as I should. Is it, so, Mark hit me up and he said, listen, I've got this cultivar. I want to name it Hash Church. And I was kind of like a little bit like, ooh. I was a little bit like, I'm kind of a little bit protective of like the Hash Church name, I haven't monetized it. I haven't done anything like that. And I told him, like, I don't want to take anything from you. I'm not trying to be that greasy guy that just starts monetizing everything that I'm doing with you guys. I just didn't really, feel that it was the thing I wanted to do. But he said, look, let me send you a cut. You can grow it. You can harvest it. You can let me know if you think it could hold the name Hash Church. And so he sent me the cut, and I managed to get one to Flav, and I completely fucked the rest of it up. And I just, for whatever reason, it was one of the first plants, and I don't think this has anything to do with the plant itself because Flav is crushing it. But generally, whenever I've had a small tent, I've been able to throw a couple of plants in there and never have a problem. With this one, it just gave me a problem for whatever reason. And funny enough, I ended up putting a Congo just to sort of save face, as to, realize that I'm not talking shit on the Hash Church. I threw a Congo into the same tent, and the exact same thing started happening. It just started looking like it was nutrient deficient, like it was locking, and I mean, I know how to grow weed. I feed very simple. I'm using Medi-1, of course.
The what light?
Listen, I'm not going to get into a huge Elysian LED conversation with you right now, but I had an LED light in from one of the companies, and I had an HPS in there as well. The old tried and true, which I've always been able to grow great resin with, full melt resin. Anyway, I totally fucked that up. And, Mark, being as awesome as he is, was like, well, maybe I could send you some flour and you could just make a batch, run some hash or something. And I was like, oh man, I feel bad, I told him, well, if you send me flour, I'm not smoking any of the hash. It's all been sitting in these pizza boxes since I made it. I actually made it for my course on camera, but I wanted to talk about it. And the hash came out completely white. I mean, super light colored. It did have a melt factor to it. It wasn't like a 6-star, but it definitely was melty. For me, what I really loved about it is it reminded me of an old cultivar I used to grow back 25 plus years ago called the Dutch Treat. Now, people may hear that name and think they had exactly the Dutch Treat that I have or had. I never really saw it as that again. And I saw the Dutch Treat many times over the years, but this particular Dutch Treat looked very much like this. It was very coated. It had this real sort of, unique flavor, which I also found this particular cultivar had a little bit. So, Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this cultivar came to be, the parental stock that was used to create it, and just a little bit about the hash church. I also want to mention before Mark starts is that he's been, beyond like, okay, look, he's like all of us, like we're all hurting. This COVID-19 is a real crusher to him and his family. It took a lot away from him. And now he's in a position where he's got this thing. I started posting it. People were like, where can I get that? Where can I get that? And they're hitting him up like you wouldn't believe. Like, we want to buy seeds. We want to buy this. We want to buy that. And he's told me, he's like, listen, I'm not selling it. I'm not giving it away until you give me the okay that I can use this name. And so I feel a little bit bad because it's taken a long time. And if I really think of what COVID's taken away from this guy, maybe I would get off my ass a little bit more and make it happen. And so today, that's what we're doing. We're talking about Hash Church on Hash Church. He's going to let us know a little bit about the genetics, a little bit about, running it, growing it, etc. And then we'll go on from there. So, Mark, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thanks, Marcus. I'm not sure if I'm going to become black glitchy or not to you fellas. That you guys were a little bit glitchy. So as long as you guys can hear me okay, I think I'm good to go.
Yeah, we can hear you great. Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. So pretty much started with years of watching Hash Church, to be quite honest. Ever since this show started, I've kind of tuned in. I see Dragonfly has just signed up now. Those guys have been a big inspiration to me. I kind of started in the hydroponic type area back in the early 90s. And then once stumbling across Hash Church and realizing, organics are definitely the full way. I just kind of going down that Dragonfly route of like a fully regenerative organic kind of growing style. So from that point, I just want to say a big shout out to all you guys, every one of you growers on here, whether you are hash makers or not. Big inspiration for this cultivar. I don't think, and I've told this to Marcus before, I don't think the thing would exist without the show or the Man channel. So to give you a quick rundown, fast story of how this come to be. I was skimming across online and stumbled across Bubble Man's channel, and he was advertising his solventless extraction class. So I thought, to pay a bit of respect back, I will sign up for that. And the thing that blew me away, it was literally like a light switch going off in my head. He does his introduction, a part of this solventless class, hosted by Ganja University. He starts off his introduction in his wakeboard boat, actually, sitting in the middle of the ocean. And dude, you break down that plant within the 20 to 30 minutes. It was like a light switch literally going off in my head of how little I really didn't know about the plant. And from that point, I realized, yes, I needed to, I wanted to create my own kind of hash plant. So at that point, I did my first cross. It didn't turn out that great. I'm just a small little grower in a little 4x4 tent. So very, very limited of what I could do inside that. So I figured out I'm going to go back at it again. I'll try it again. Why not? I really wanted a good hasher. I just didn't have access around this area to any quality like you guys talked about. So that's when I crossed the DNA's kosher sorbet with Canuck cookies. I collected roughly about 190 seeds off that particular cross. And I figured, I got to give this a shot. I popped the first seed. As this thing was progressing into flower, I just noticed the large number of trichromes that were growing on it. And I had enough experience in the past where I realized that I had something that I thought was a little special as far as the trichrome production went. So at that point, I just, kept growing it out, taking as many photos as I could. And the cool thing was it started to produce this terpene, like Marcus had mentioned, it reminded me more of a Northern Lights skunk cross I grew back in the 90s. It just was a super, super gassy dank coming off of it. And my lights, the photo period would go off from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And I just noticed that the carbon filters in my indoor tent just were not keeping up to it. That's how gassy and stinky she was. So as it got later into flower, the thing that struck me for the Hash Church name was I was taking an upshot of fan leaf, and to me it screamed like it looked like a church window, stained glass window of a church, which was super cool. So I thought, fuck, well, how cool would it be to, have a strain named Hash Church? I thought the potential could be there. I knew I needed to make hash at that point. So I ran a quick batch of hash through, and I pulled the 120. I was telling Marcus, the very first run I had made of this, I pulled the 120 and it was just jammed full. I couldn't believe it, how bad this thing dumped in the 120. My previous runs past that point, it just seems to have changed into a 90 and a 73 now, but just a mysterious part of it. But anyway, at that point, I reached out to Marcus. I said, hey, I think I have something that you might want to look at. I think it's got a good potential. I'm sure he probably said, geez, who's this guy? Why is he wanting to name it Hash Church? So at that point I said, well, let's make a little bargain deal. I'll ship you out some clones. You guys grow them out. At first I thought that, they were going to flip them a little bit sooner. And I know Flav had his in quarantine, which was super cool. I respect that. So I thought,
hey, Mark.
Yeah, sorry.
No, sorry to cut you off. I just want to show everyone, when you're like, yeah, so I shipped him off a couple of clones. We talked about this before, but look what he shipped the clones off in. This is what the clones showed up in, just for everyone to know. This guy is top fucking notch, okay? I couldn't believe it when these custom homemade PVC pipes that he's glued a couple of tops onto. Who the fuck has ever sent you clones in a clone? Oh, and he also added lights. He had tiny little lights inserted into the unit with a little battery pack taped onto the outside. So they never were dark at all the entire time that he shipped them. I have never received clones in anything this absolutely beautiful. I'll keep these forever, bro. Like I'm telling you, this is some tattoo art that you sent me on the tubing that you sent the clones. So sorry to interrupt, but I needed to let everyone know the level of awesomeness and the level of caliber that you're operating at.
I'm loving that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
And
thank you, appreciate that. I knew I definitely shit the bed the first time. It was very first time I had shipped clones actually. And the very first ones I sent to Marcus, he probably laughed when he opened them up and thought, what the fuck is this? But anyway, I sent him up, I knew I had to take special care of the second batch. So I packed them up and sent them off to him. But pretty much at that point, I wanted to kind of speed the process up for Marcus, at least to get an idea of what the terpenes were like on this particular cultivar. So I said, dude, what's chances I can ship you some flour? Yeah, man. He says, send me some out. So I shipped him out a small little bit of flour so he could wash just to see. And obviously pictures are one thing, and at least he could put a terpene profile to the photo anyway. And at that point now, I just pretty much continue to run it out and try to get all I can out of her, trying to push her as much as I can. And I know Marcus had said you can't really wave a magic wand and be a full melt grower right off the bat. So I'm definitely a little dragonfly in training, I'm going to say. But that's pretty much the story of where how it came to be. And mad respect to you all. Like, I don't think honestly it would exist without the knowledge drops that you guys have done in the past.
Mark, those designs that you dropped on there, where were they from, and why did you select those on the packaging? That's pretty epic, all in all, just to send a nice packaging. But of course, you wanted to make an impression, and apparently you very much did. So how'd you go about the art selection process?
To be honest, it was a temporary tattoos. So it was quite easy. They were like an armband tattoo you would purchase that you would just stick on. And I thought, I got to go all out and make a little impression for Marcus that I've, took a little extra care this time, and thought, what the heck, why not?
How many weeks is the cultivar in terms of flowering times? And what are you doing? You want to talk a little bit about what you're vegging, how long you're vegging for, and what you think the cultivar likes, and what have you seen so far?
Yeah, thanks, Colin. I'm a big fan of yours too, dude. I mad respect to the hash you've been making too. I've been checking that out. All you guys, man, it's incredible. But veg time has changed. I've just been pretty much playing around with it. The node spacing could be tighter. Flower time sits, which I'm experimenting with, sits about anywhere from, I'm guessing, 55 to 60 days, somewhere in that neighborhood. The one thing that I did, and I think Bubble Man maybe seen some photos of, is I was harvesting fresh frozen flower once every about 4 days as it was growing late in flower, and trying to run hash that way in mason jars just to see how it actually acts. And, at what point is it going to smoke the best? So I got a lot of work to do yet, but just trying to get all I can out of her.
How much does she usually yield on a wash, percentage-wise?
I've even pushed probably closer to 1/4 pound per plant. That's in a 4x4 single plant run, though. It's not a huge yielding plant. There's no doubt about that. It doesn't have but I think frost makes up for the yield myself.
When you wash her, what percentage of rosin are you left with in the end?
For the rosin, I was getting back anywhere from 20 to the highest I got was 22% so far.
It's not too bad at all. Unfortunately, when I washed it, I didn't have a scale and I was unable to do the math on the returns. I think from a bubble hash perspective, it was probably around like 14, 15%. But I wasn't actually able to do the accurate math. I did squish a little rosin, and I got a little under, I think I got around like 14 to 16. I got to admit, I felt bad having this guy's flour, and I didn't want to like smoke it all and press it all and wash it all. I was just like, I'll make it and then I'll send it back to him. So I've got 99% of his hash. Someone did just ask me, hey, why don't you just take a quick little bowl? So I've got a little bit right here. I'm going to dump in the old bowl right now, and it's definitely bubbling and melting and boiling.
And just another thing quick to mention is that, hopefully one day all of you guys get a chance to grow it out. That would be super cool. That was kind of my overall goal was, eventually if all you guys could have the cut, or if at least you just wanted to try it out, that kind of was my goal eventually, would be super cool.
Very cool, man. It's good. There's no doubt about it. It's reminiscent of that sort of Dutch treat flavor. It doesn't have a really there's not a fruity flavor to it. I hear what you're saying with the gassy flavor, but even in this dab, it's more like a musky kind of, I don't know, just like a Dutch treat. Really nice. That was my first high of the day, my wake and bake, if you will. And very much like right in here, almost like a headband, feeling pretty good. It's got a really nice high. When I first hit it, I was like, oh, it's the hash church. It's got to have the most resin. It's got to knock people out. And I hit it and I didn't get knocked out, but I realized I don't need it to knock me out. I've got like wedding cake and some other cultivars that are nice and heavy that I can go to bed with. But this one was a really nice sort of, a lot of my hashes, I've got Congolese in the morning. That's the one that lifts me up. I hit the heavier ones in the evening, and I hit some of the real tasty kind of upbeat ones in the middle of the day as to not burn out and fall asleep. But Hash Church, funny enough, I can hit it in any of those categories. I'm happy to hit it at night. I'm happy to hit it in the morning. I haven't hit it much, but I know how bad I want to hit it. And that's generally what decides for me if I like something. It's very easy. If I have something on my desk that sits for a month, then it's not really generally something that I'm excited about or that I'm feeling good about. So Hash Church definitely is a nice cultivar. I'm going to get clones back from Flav so I can actually grow it in my tent. Try and get one over to Johnny B and maybe to the Dragonfly Earth Medicine folks and any of the other Canadian. Welcome, by the way, you guys. Welcome, by the way.
I have one quick question just for Mark real quick. If when you water wash it, which micron had the best glands on it for Hash Church? 90, 120?
I can go back to that very first wash, Etienne, that I did the first run. It dumped in the 120 and had a beautiful, beautiful melt point. And I haven't been able to achieve that since for some strange reason. It seems to be all in the, my last few runs of it have been in the 70 and the 90, 73 and 90.
That's what I saw as well. I just hit the 73 and it really is a nice vibe hash. Like there's no doubt about that. The plant looks beautiful under the macro lens. Maybe I can actually I'm pretty sure I photographed it and uploaded those pictures, unless they're on my camera right now, in which case, obviously, I would not be able to open them up. But let me just go look real quick and see if I can't find at least a few macro shots of the plant we love so much. Okay, so yeah, I think I do. I'll have to open it up in Lightroom. Give me a second here. Welcome to the Dragonfly Earth Medicine. If you guys want to have a little chat with us real quick while I'm checking this out, while I open these Hash Church photos, we'd love to hear from you.
Super thankful to hear the story. Good to see everyone this morning. Really cool to hear your story, Mark. And, I love that about cannabis. It shows itself to the people who, often are really dedicated, and I can see that you have this dedication inside of you and let's say the plant's rewarding you for it. And, and I love the idea that we're all sharing it and learning about it and stuff. And it's just, it's an exciting time. It gives us something positive to think about and work with the plant and everything. So good to see everyone this morning.
And just when you think that, like all of the best strains are already out there, it's really awesome to see a new one come out and then how it rolls out and how we're looking at it. And it's really awesome.
And
love
good
the
job
conversation this morning.
Good job on the clone delivery as well. I'll have to second that emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Keep chatting, guys. I'm looking for these pictures here, and I can't both chat and.
So, Mark, you said at first it came out heavy on the 120, and then now you find it coming out more, heavy on the 70 and 90. Do you have any gut feelings or intuition about that in your experience?
I'm a little confused by that. I actually had mentioned that to Bubble Man that the very first run was all in the 120, and for some reason it's just, I'm getting a big amount in the 90 and the 73 and even the 45. The Melty is sitting in the 90 the last couple runs. So I'm just trying to find that, I guess. I've started using live worm castings, and that was kind of stemmed on by you guys as well. I've kind of taken and started composting indoor using a live worm casting worm bin. And I believe, it's getting approaching about 3 years old now, and the microbiology and you can just pop it open and you're seeing all the microbes, all the tiny little beneficial bugs.
I got some questions for you, Mark. I was just curious on like temperatures. DLI, if you know what your daily light integrals are, if you're running like your VPD, what's your temperatures, humidity levels. Like I'm really curious on the strain because of course I do so many testings on different varieties. So I'm kind of curious on like how you're running the strain.
Hey Johnny, I'm a big fan of you too, brother. I just going to throw this out quick too, Johnny, because I know you were running LEDs. So the two lights that I've been running with this particular cultivar were the Optic 8 and the Electric Sky 300S. I've had the most success under that Electric Sky. Both are, getting huge amount of frost, but the Electric Sky seems to excel. I'm not sure. I got a total draw watt for my two Electric Skies can approach to be about 600 watts if I fully crank them. And this cultivar likes to sit about the 300 mark, which is, quite low lighting. So I think it likes particularly low lighting compared to my Optic 8 is crazy amount. It's bright, those cob lights. So it just prefers a little bit of a lower lighting. As far as VPD, I haven't really messed with VPD too much. Yeah, dude, I just haven't really messed with that. I kind of did a little bit, but I found that VPD is a little strange as far as how high they wanted the humidity at certain points. Just seemed like almost a nightmare ready to begin as far as PM, but I could see trying to get into a little bit better range of that over time. Hopefully, it's hard to dial into in my basement the way I'm growing and just a small 4x4 tent. So.
Oh God, that really changes everything. The
Hey, Mark,
tent is really hard to control, so I understand that.
Are you planning on making any seeds or germplasm of Hash Church?
Sorry, Etienne, I didn't get that.
Are you planning on making any seeds or germplasm of Hash Church? Besides, I know it's available in clone.
You'll have to explain germplasm. That's new one to me.
That's just another word for seeds.
Oh, okay. I'm sitting on at the F1s. I'm sitting on about 180, and math says if I've only popped one of those seeds, happen to be the Hash Church, I've popped, I think, 4 more just to run them outdoor, just to see what they were going to actually be like. Still frosty and terpy, but not quite like that first one. And math says there's got to be some other ones in that package. I'd like to make an F2 cross though eventually, but I'm just kind of following Bubble Man's guidance kind of with this one of what he recommends, honestly.
I want to offer an opinion. One of the things that I learned early on in this work is that the health and vitality of the mother plant that you're taking cuttings from has a lot to do with the vitality of those cuttings once you try growing them out. And so if your nursery, your mother plants are also in that 4x4 tent or in that same basement, it's likely the vitality of those mothers might be deteriorating, and that's why you're seeing a reduction in the size of your trichomes. Just a thought.
Yeah, I agree, Wade. I've had a tough time actually keeping the original mother alive. She's looking a lot better than it did about a month ago. But yeah, it's tough. I'm finding it super tough to keep a mother around for as long as I have now, and just trying to keep her as healthy as possible, like you had mentioned. And I realized that if the healthier the mother is, the better the clones are going to be for sure.
Yeah, I second what Wade's saying about propagation. Propagation is the most important part of your cycle. If you don't start with the right cuts and take care of them, you're going to have a really hard time through your growth cycle. So rejuvenating those moms often is usually very helpful. And don't give up on it. It's a battle sometimes.
Well, you
go ahead, Mark.
No.
Come on now. With mothers too, I mean, broad mites and russet mites have been around for a good amount of time for a lot of people, but you'd be unbelievably surprised how often they still go by without being diagnosed.
Yeah.
And the only way to really know whether you have them is a trained eye, or a microscope and looking at the bottom of the leaf. And it doesn't have to be a microscope like a table microscope, but one that's around 60, and then you look at the bottom of the leaf, and if the bottom of the leaf looks like it has trichomes on it, at the bottom of the sunleaf, that there's not trichomes on the bottom of the sunleaf, and that it's broadmite eggs or russet eggs. And often the plant can look like it's depleted. The plant can often look like it has a CalMag deficiency, or it doesn't have the growth that it's looking for, when really it's just being eaten by a microscopic mite. So, and people have all kinds of different regimens, but just the simple regimen of a Swirsky and Cuckoo Maris duo of predator mites in with your mother, right? In with your mother and your clones, of course. You're put it in your closet put some of the predators on your closet, on your jackets and everything, just get predators everywhere eating. So you become a beneficial organism when you go around. And then as you propagate and put it into the flower room, you have a fresh round, in the flower room. And then that allows your plant leaves, the leaves of your plants, to be flat. And people in this community need to understand that flat leaves and praying is health. That's our goal. That's our goal. All the trichomes come, all of the good smoke, the melt, everything comes after you have a flat, healthy leafed plant. And that's something for everyone to just get to know about.
And I think that, we go to a lot of different grow rooms and a lot of outdoor gardens. And I'd say that in the indoor grow rooms, a huge percentage of people have broad mites. And people always say, hey, I don't see the broad mites. Well, if you actually see a mite, then you're way over infested. They're super fast moving. They're incredibly fast moving. And also the male broad mites disperse the female eggs throughout the leaf. So it's not like you find like a bundle of eggs or anything. Go ahead, Johnny. You had a question?
I like this because I'm actually seeing exactly what you're talking about right now. I've been talking about this because what happened is I got some clones from a friend, Mark knows him, Monty, went to the neighbors who had these mites. And they were in his bathroom. And at about week 7, I started getting him in my flower room. So it didn't make a difference to me because it came in. But now that I'm seeing him on my mom's, I'm like, okay, next step. So I'm on the bug lady right now. I'm like, I've always sprayed. I've gone around that thing, but I don't want to spray this time. I'm like, okay, You guys are so convinced me right now. So right here, now, bug lady, what do I got to order?
Also, Johnny, try to look. Beneficial nematodes are really helpful as well. I found a lot of comfort in using them. It helps
nematodes quite a bit in my soils in the past because
it's just all of it together is just a great IPM system, and I love what Josh and Kelly are saying. It's so needed.
This is one of the reasons why I have an appreciation for tissue culture. Right? Meristemic tissue culture, just micropropagation. You're still cloning, but you're cloning like a tiny little fraction of the meristem and then growing it up, right? Growing it in this agar medium in a little jar. And it starts growing, and all of its fungi and bacteria and viruses, they try to keep up, but they can't keep up. And so you cut that little meristem, you get it into that medium, which is really the IP that's going to convince that plant to grow a dominant shoot and start growing upwards. And so you do this for about 4 to 6 months in tissue culture, and they call it initiation. And so what it does is it removes all of those fungi, bacteria, and viruses by the plant growing faster and faster and faster. So now you've got your clone, you're cutting it up here. You've got your viruses and fungi and bacteria that are trying to keep up. And eventually you can get them out of that plant completely. And which is what Wade began this discussion with in regards to, hey, you know, you might have some sort of thing going on with your mother stock that now the trichome production is down. Well, that thing would be fungi, bacteria, and viruses impregnating your plant and slowing down its ability to express itself under the perfect conditions that you're trying to produce for it. So had Ian from Segra been here today, he's with his daughter this morning. So props to him for being a good dad, but I really wanted him to be here and he would have been able to say what I just said much more elegantly and maybe even clearer. But
well, not only that, you know, my other company that I have is Bioagronomics Group with Rob Clark and Mojave, and our genetics were just cleaned up by Segra. And so on our bioagronomics site, we have 3 cultivars that were actually fully biologically cleaned up, and it took some time, and it's quite a process. But quite excited that we're getting ready to put out a press release regarding our cultivars. So look for that in the coming.
Dude, amazing. Yeah, I know all about it. I just didn't want to say anything, but amazing that you got to say it. And I can't wait for you to release the public release. That'll be awesome to hear about. That's really cool that you're involved with bioagronomics with Mojave and Rob Clark. That's a pretty strong trio of people right there. Very cool.
That's a great group right there. Are you guys working with any older stuff that you can talk about? Is there anything that's exciting that you want to tell us about?
You know, we're just in the midst of licensing. You know, we're doing what O'Driscoll does here in the States, which license blackberries and raspberries. So we're doing that with the older cultivars and genetics that Rob has collected over the decades, as well as Mojave, since he's, you know, his master botanist. So we have a few things that are in the pipes, but, you know, the contracts and all that we're still waiting for. So as those come forward, we'll be more than happy to make those aware. But, and, you know, contracts. But yes, there's a lot of interest, as well as especially toward the old world genetics, because they're just so missing. On top of that, you know, we were subjective to such as Dave's palate. Dave liked the sweeter type of palate. So now we'll have access to the full range of the older palate for new cultivars to be developed and made from. So that's what I'm most excited about, is to you know, bring back the old so that we can pull out some of those things that we miss, because we've all been subjective to the palates of the actual botanists who have made these plants. And there may be some that I like that you not like, or there may be some nuances that we're going to find. But yeah, it's going to be an exciting next couple of years for sure.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. At the same time,
I just took cuts and re-upped a bunch of older stuff that I've kept for around 21 years to date. And it's been a battle to keep these things going. But you know,
I'm in the same boat. I've had my stuff for 15, 18 years, 20 years. The Northern Light #5, like I call Medi Kush, is more like a pure Kush. If you look at the land races and the strains that were around back in the days, and just the era and the time that I was in place of just genetics, I got myself on some of those rare ones, those first OGs, those first Hindu Kushes and Bubba Kushes and the lemon ties. Well, that's all we ran. That's all my friends said. We laugh about it. Said that's all we used to run back in those days. And
right.
It was all the seeds we were popping. And I'm hearing stories about this, and we're laughing. I said that's the one I called an M4 because it was the fourth cut of the M of this, and it came out some name over there. And it's pretty cool to start seeing how people are looking at those old genetics and realizing that that's where the fire started, and that's what they need in order to kind of. There's a lot of stuff out there. It tastes really good, but it just doesn't get you there. You know, it's nice, but it's like doesn't give you that punch that I'm still looking.
That's the problem. We're all going different places.
Yeah.
There's a lot of theirs.
Could be the beauty of it all, though, too. Hidden beauty.
Of course.
You know, I kind of appreciate the older varieties that are that are more floral and more equatorial. They have a certain entourage effect to them that I don't get from a lot of the newer stuff that I
something like that peanut butter breath that came to me one time. It was just like, oh, I have to have it, please. And someone else had this wedding crash. I'm like, can I get that cut from you, like, by any chance? Because it's just so tasty. I like that. I mean, there's the varieties out there with the breeders and the people just popping and growing for 2021. It's just like a whole new beginning, a whole new generation of growers and seeds and varietals coming out there. It's pretty cool. It's really nice to see that 2021 is going to be a growing year for everybody, and looking forward to all these new strains. But let's try and find those genetics that they're coming from, because some of these names I hear, I'm like, what is that? I'm on Seed Finder, it doesn't exist. Like tell me what these strains are, where are they coming from, like what are their parents, or and it's like they just, you can't call it this, you got to call it something else, and then now you don't know what it is. So
well, sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
I was just saying, I think that it's more important than ever. Like I know I had said this one time before on Hash Church, is to pop those 2021 seeds because of all the intention that went into the 2020, breeding time. We're all in this crazy lockdown. There's so much energy going on. We're all dealing with really heightened emotions or heartstrings, and all of this energy has been going into our gardens. And now we have this great opportunity to pop these 21, seeds that see what kind of answers that the plant can give us as a collective consciousness. So super exciting to me. And I love it that, John, you're really, bringing up the energy of popping those seeds. So encouraging everybody, share your seeds, pop them. Let's get them out there. Let's really let cannabis, do what she's meant to do, which is really heal the planet.
Well, that's why I was asking Mark about seeds earlier. But it's interesting. I got selected to be a judge for the Emerald Cup, and it's happening in the spring this year. Unfortunately, it's not a gathering, but we're going to be doing the sampling and judging part. This year, they're actually going to be doing it by terpene profile. They're not doing it by names. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Because I've always had the issue of names or suggestions or terroirs, etc. So now we're going to be issued them by terpene profile. So that's going to be very interesting. Sclabs is actually doing all the testing again, and they're still receiving currently for the next couple of weeks. So you can go to the Emerald Cup online, and if you're domestic, they're also having a traditional market cup as well. So it's not just a legal market cup, we're having a traditional market cup. So those that are in the underground markets can actually try to compete against those that are in the legal market. And it's going to be very interesting to see how everything's broken out. But I think we're going to be judging in March officially, or this ceremony is going to be. But shout out to Emerald Cup and Tim Blake and the crew for still keeping it going after COVID, and we weren't able to meet this past December, because otherwise I would have seen Dragonfly and y'all beautiful smiling faces and hugged y'all and smoked out. But unfortunately, it's just not that way, and not going to be that way. Hopefully next year.
Big up to Hazel Bagwell. Hazel, we love you.
Yeah, all the work that everybody's doing out there. Hey, we wanted to let you guys know that.
Wait, hang on. Wait. Did you want to say something? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I want to jump in for a second and just say it's actually, in my mind, pretty good news that the judging is happening in the spring, because the things you're sampling have actually had a chance to cure properly. I have talked to Tim Blake about that the second or third time that he did the Emerald Cup, and he said, "Look, man, I own that weekend in December. I can't change it just because the taste will be better." But much respect, and enjoy the judging process.
And
the
they
other thing I
were
wanted to
playing. Yeah, go
What's
ahead.
that?
I didn't know you wanted to say something. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I got one other thing I wanted to say. We were talking about all of the beautiful old cultivars that are coming to hand, maybe. Etienne, thank you for doing that work. And others, everybody. I want to add in not just terpenes, like everybody's talking about all the different experiences that primarily type 1 cannabis, THC, gives you. And I'm really a big fan, as you probably know, of type 2 cannabis, where you've got THC and CBD and other cannabinoids together. And I think that's part of the minor cannabinoids and CBD in relation to THC is where I think the feel good part of cannabis usage comes in. Type 1 high THC is really about psychoactivity and it's can get literally psychedelic. We were talking about mushrooms last week, and I was thinking about people whose first experience with cannabis was a really fat edible that some friend gave them, that because they said they wanted to try cannabis. So they got a 150 milligram dose of THC the very first time they ever tried it and got obliterated. I mean, I've had that experience myself. And it's, anyway, yeah, cannabis can be not just about getting high, but it can also be about feeling good. And I think that's one of the things that I'm personally very excited about. That's because it works in my life.
Makes me feel good, makes me feel happy. I like being happy. People are like, oh, you're a stoner. I'm like, so I like being happy. So I use cannabis because I'm happy. It makes me happy. And I'm addicted to being happy. I'm addicted to feeling good. And cannabis makes me feel good. So what's wrong with that? Like,
there's nothing wrong with feeling good.
That's
Johnny.
the best thing. It's like we feel good. And if that makes you feel good, then that's fantastic. And someone's mentioned something on my Facebook page. Oh, you're just a junkie. And I mean, people like Soma Mission. Some people are just like ragging on this guy. Or like, I use cannabis because it makes me feel good. And that is the best part about being what we do. We use it because it makes us feel good. It inspires our mind. It makes us do better things for ourselves or for others. I mean, most people smoke a joint, want to help people. Oh, hey, can I help you? Can I do something for you? Like, look at this cannabis community. And I think that the walls are down, things are changing, people are growing, and enough of what's happening. And let's grow forward for 2021. That's the whole idea.
There are some major obstacles for Californians this year with the fire development and the widening of roads. There's a lot of people in California that are feeling like their whole entire growing season is under threat with new laws.
Their whole farm, not their season, their whole farm is under threat for them to be able to receive a new license. So if they don't widen the roads to where there's a truck turnaround, that every fire truck can make a turnaround, that they're not going to allow any licensing of any type of businesses up those roads. So a tremendous amount of California licensed farms are under threat right now. And a lot of the farms and a lot of people who are very politically involved feel like it's a definite attack against the small cannabis farmer rather than just a good idea for wildfires in California. There's lots of other ways that things could happen other than the farmers are responsible for widening the roads. Basically put everybody out of business.
Shout out to Spring Creek Farm for bringing that to our pure certified attention, our group and stuff.
Yeah, and shout
it's
out
happening
to
in Maine as well. Maine is starting to squeeze down on the caregiver market, and it's getting pretty dicey. So if any of you activists out there, anyone that is involved in the community, please comment, please talk about it, please be vocal. It'll really help us all.
Yeah, I mean, we got to keep compassionate care the focus of the legalization and everything, and compassionate care is what gave us the ability. It gave us this evolution. So to turn our back on compassionate care for the sake of corporate business and the sake of profits, it's horrible. And when Johnny says, oh, I'm addicted to feeling good, and that's why I smoke cannabis, we're addicted to helping the earth while we create cannabis to feel good. So we're creating all these systems to say, hey, the earth is also ailing. And so I'm not going to take a compound or a plant like cannabis, grow it degeneratively so that I can regenerate humanity. So like, I just want to encourage people to recognize that all of the actions that you do are part of the health and well-being that we're going, that we're moving towards. And we're working really, really hard on making our medicine available in Canada and creating a new website for compassionate care to make it available to patients
for medical patients
in Canada. So this is going to be a really big new step for us, and we're really excited about it. And it's not finished yet, so we can't share exact details on it. But I think it's for the betterment of all people on Earth. And I hope it's all going to be great for Canadians.
And also it's called plant medicine. I just want to remind everybody, it's plant medicine. So all of those plants out there are speaking to us as humans. We have this long, incredible, in-depth history with these plant medicines.
I want to jump in about this thing you mentioned happening in California, and it sounds like in Maine as well. The specifics of it is the Board of Forestry is considering the new updating of the fire regulations, and where it applies to, where it affects cannabis farmers, it also affects everyone who lives in rural areas in California, because the way it's going to play out is if you want a permit to do anything like repair the deck on your house or build a house or have a cannabis commercial activity on your property, you have to have a road that allows a fire truck to come in and a car to come out at the same time, which is 20 feet wide plus a couple of feet wide on each side. And every so often you have to have turnouts, and it's basically appropriate if you wanted to put a Walmart or a gas station or a shopping center on your farm. You would need a road like that. But to require that for any kind of permit, especially a cannabis permit, means a lot of the heritage farms in California are being faced with the environmental impacts of putting in a commercial scale road to their farm in order to get a permit to have cannabis license. And really the whole idea of legislation or legalization, as it's called, it's really commercialization. But the whole idea of legalization was to give heritage free market farmers a chance, a way to come into compliance with the law. This effort through the Board of Forestry is a thinly disguised effort to shut that effort down and perpetuate, in my opinion, prohibition and the whole war on drugs thing. One last little remnant of the only a few more days left president, if you will, in the United States. Pardon my politics there.
People have to understand that once you get into Northern California, once you get off the main roads, it's all dirt roads. You get up into Sonoma, you get into Mendocino, you get into Humboldt, that's the reality. I mean, one farm I went to was literally 45 minutes off the county road. Okay. So it is onerous and very frustrating, because I was previously a legacy traditional market grower up in Mendocino myself. So we had a farm and we had legal numbers, et cetera. And then the next year they changed it from 99 plants to 25, so it's unfortunately been a frustration, because then we lost our farm because we couldn't afford to keep it open because the numbers just didn't make sense in the end for what we were trying to do. Whereas 99 plants, it made it okay to do, but very challenging given the terroir and what we were dealing with. So it's definitely a frustration. And so this is a direct threat to the traditional market and some people that I know in the traditional market, because I know somebody who purchased our farm in Mendocino County and now they're a legal market, but these types of restrictions will run them out of business because how far off they are on the road and the cost will get it to get there, et cetera, it's illogical. And on top of that, it's just a frustration all in all. So I'm sorry to hear that that's also happening in Maine and other states, but this is where pushback needs to happen. We are having challenges. So this is why you need to show up at your water board meetings, your forestry meetings. People say, oh, I don't want to get involved in politics. Well, all this is politics around you, affecting everything from your roads to your sewage to your access and your access points. So we really have to, always think, globally, but act locally completely. So, plug in, be at the table. Otherwise, you're on the menu. and nobody wants to be on the menu. So show up and be at the table. It's a pain in the ass. That's the price of liberty, unfortunately. But if you want to continue, what we did in the past, sitting back and hiding in our shelters, growing our cannabis quietly, no longer works for us. We have to actually plug in and speak up. On top of that, we have to figure out a way in California to raise up the traditional market. We've been able to do it with the overregulated market, but we need to figure out how to make the traditional market safer for consumers, because consumers have chosen that. But we know the unscrupulous cannabis that does not make the grade in the legal market goes to the traditional market. So I'm always fascinated from traditional marketists on the frustrations that I hear from them, which is, the over saltification of their plants that they get, and the cannabis is no longer the craft quality they used to get prior. It's kind of a commercial quality that people are utilizing to make money. So we've got this unfortunate continuation of the prohibition that has led to, back in the day, remember we used to import all that stuff from Canada in those bags, etc., that extra wet weed that we would get back in the day.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Beasters.
Yeah. So, I mean, we
let me just defend Canada for half a second, because it didn't start like that. But I will say this. I met quite a few buyers over the years that would tumble the flowers before they brought it down to sell it to their American brethren. They would tumble the flowers, and I'm talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. They're pulling like so much resin off that plant, and then the poor Canadian growers were getting like burned for like, oh, you guys are growing the swag up there. We call it no trikes. It's like, yeah, well, you should talk to your brother who's selling it to you, because that's not cool. Fuck. Go ahead.
Also an issue of hydroponic growing taking off, and the whole warehouse grown hydroponic blast off mode that happened in British Columbia. And then of course mix that with the syndicates that bring things back and forth, and you just have those remnants around still today. But,
and when we talk about commercial weed not being very good, well, we can talk about that in the same light as Beasters. That's exactly what it was. It was really sort of the first time that North America had seen such volume of that salted commercial weed. And that was definitely coming from, a particular variety of people up here in Canada.
But even that didn't start like that, because I remember how that started. And Breeder Steve was really one of the people who he gave that cut to key people. And they were just like, oh, wow, like we can do this instead of this other very dangerous thing. And I remember back in the day, like when those guys first started doing it, it was grapefruit. And it was unbelievable that people that never grew before were growing like this beautiful grapefruit flower. The problem was within about 2 to 3 years, they were just like, we get the same money. We don't even have to dry it. We don't even have to finish it. It's like 5 weeks, whatever. And it sort of turned into this sort of thing where it was like, that was a big part of the Beasters name as well, 100%. But I remember when it first started, I was blown away at the quality that they were able to produce very early on. It surprised me. Most people go in the other direction.
The Kootenays of British Columbia are one of the homelands of cannabis in all of Canada, right? I mean, there's
one of them.
There's Vancouver, and there's the islands, and there there's certain areas. But
Kootenay's a big one. I'll be honest, because I first went to the Kootenays almost 30 years ago, and they were growing and digging holes on the mountain and mixing soils and had a deep knowledge of organics and sustainability. And I'm telling you, like some of the flower that I saw there in particular, one that I would love to find if anyone ever knew the background of this lineage. It was called the A1 Magenta, and it was one of the most beautiful Kootenai grown flowers. It turned ever so purple, but very, very light purple. Not that purple that you look at and go, that's probably not going to be very strong or tasty, but this really nice, light, almost like a light pink would come over this plant. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful high. I would compare it high-wise to Kaya's coffee.
Oh yeah.
That sort of very uplifting, just like, this is beautiful stuff.
That's
and that was probably in 1990 or 91 that I went there and dug holes and planted those plants and helped my friends from the Kootenays grow one of their
we
crops.
first came to the Kootenays in 98, and our brain exploded. We came from Oregon and Northern California, and it was so militant and so hardcore and harsh, and had this like super edge. Like, I'm from there. Like, I know the edge. It's fine. It's a beautiful thing, you know. But when you come up to the Kootenays, you go, oh my God.
Especially back then.
This place is serious. And then we were smoking weed like in town in a store in 1998, smoking hash oil off a coal. You know,
oh yeah, off the mare.
Dude, we were smoking hash oil in 98. And then you know,
dude, those guys, who do you think I was talking about?
That's what exactly. And you know, and these families are, you know, what I love about this region, and is kind of a potent for this time of politics and everything, is the conscientious objectors that live in this area. It's important for people to know the term conscientious objector.
And they were the ones that came from, you know, decided that they didn't want to go to the Vietnam War. And a tremendous amount of them came up to the Kootenays to grow ganja. And they were the ones, when we first came here in 98, it was all the 50-year-olds, you know, now our age people that were giving us all these seeds that they had been breeding for 15 and 20 years. And they just sort of set us out like, here you go, kids, good luck. Here's some good pointers, and, you know, go for it.
So I'm going back 10 years to 88, when I was sitting on the back of the steps of the police station in Karamia, smoking a joint, hanging out with the guys that were growing all through there. And that's where my best friend's dad lived, and that's where they were growing. That's where some of the seeds that I started getting back in those days, 89, 90, 91. So we have a lot of commons right there, just because you guys are like 10 years later, but we know the same type of that whole thing going all the way up into Ashcroft, onto Vernon. Yeah. A lot of fire came out of there in those days. A lot of genetics back then created a lot of the companies out there today that people don't know. There's a lot of hardcore lineages back in those days.
And it was the buyers again, you know, you know, Marcus just mentioned it. It was the buyers that were, you know, sifting out flour or whatever. And it was also the buyers that started to tell us way back in the day that they didn't want it to smell, that they wanted it to look some certain way, that they didn't want it potent, and, you know, not potency as far as, you know, potency of feeling, but, you know, the terpenes. So it was just like,
I remember these times.
A real family vibe that turned into sort of like a commercial buyer thing. And that's what really made those awesome, amazing old school varietals up here in Canada turn into the beasters. And that's how we got that reputation later on.
Before the beaster started was when we got here, and we got 98. So by 99, we got given a soil recipe by a local ganja grower here, who had just come from Victoria and lived over and worked in a food production greenhouse on the island. And he came back, and the soil recipe was very similar to the living soil no-till recipes of today, almost, which was pyroclastic clay, you know, 3/3 of compost, 1/3 peat moss was big here. You know, there was no cocoa at that time. You know, the oyster shells, the glacial rock dust, there was key components, the clay. But anyway, it was very similar, almost identical.
Dude, it sounds like what we were mixing in like 90 and 91. Yep. Those guys have known for so long.
We've been making these soils, you know, since then, and it's cool to everyone's like, oh, they've changed so much. Well, I think the way they've changed is we add more actual raw materials and haze and living cover crop. Like that part's changed. Like we didn't put living seeds and living things on. So it's definitely hybridized nowadays, but the base soil of is damn near exactly the same. And I think those originally those soil recipes came from Cornell University. I mean, those old organic soil, a lot of them, you know, Cornell University is a homeland for that. But I just also
before we were doing soils, we were, you know, down in Oregon, and we were just digging holes and trying to put as much stuff as we possibly could put in the holes, make the holes as big as you possibly could, because that's what we thought was the right thing to do. So in the early 90s, we were growing humongous plants in sort of virgin soil that was really awesome and amazing too. So learning about soil recipes off of that, and like, oh wow, I guess that's what we were doing when we were mixing them in these big holes, and you know, even putting like some of the dead animals in the bottom of the hole. Oh, you find a dead frog on the road, put him in the bottom of the hole, or a dead snake or something, put him in the bottom of a hole.
The rule of thumb as we were growing up was to, like she said, put, you know, a fish or some kind of actual living dead animal in the hole, and then to have fish. Like when I was in high school, so this is like 80s or whatever, it was you know, I had close friends that were rotting fish in water, and it was the goal was to make it the most disgusting smelling liquid you could possibly make, because that's how you make stinky weed.
Yeah.
So like, you know, you get the purple kush was very common back in the late 80s in Southern Oregon. It was probably the most potent, good purple kush that you could ever get. And I would just remember absolutely amazing flavors on those herbs back then in Southern Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
You know, just to mention how prolific, and I'm sure it's as prolific now, but how prolific it was just even in the early 90s growing cannabis in the Kootenays. While we were out there digging these holes and planting these plants, you know, the Kootenays, a lot of it is around Kootenay Lake, and it's like this one road. And so it's a very kind of in and out sort of thing. And so they would set up roadblocks, and they would actually be looking for gardening equipment, shovels, pots, mud, like. And the first time I ever went through one, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, are you kidding me that the police are doing roadblocks just to see if you guys have like shovels and pots and stuff? And then they just like write your license plate down. He's like, oh yeah, man, it's like everyone here. It's just like, and they're going for it. They're like, just throw a tarp over that. They won't be able to see it. It's like, well, what if they ask to lift the tarp? Oh, whatever, man, we'll figure it out. I just loved the attitude back then. It was, it really was kind of the wild, wild west.
We're smoking weed in town, you know, but then now all of a sudden there's a roadblock on the way home. You're just like, what are we missing?
I know.
Yeah. We always used to have, you know, some wild crafted stuff in the car and just say that we were wild crafting all the time. You know, that was just always the thing. Always make sure you've got some kind of nettle or something in the car that would say that you're out wild crafting for your gardens.
And most people didn't get in trouble back then. And we know at least a good amount of people that when they did get in trouble, there, you know, they could have in the past retrieved the goods taken from them out of the dumpster, out of the back of the cop shop.
This is true story.
I've heard the same thing, to be honest, but that's the thing. It's not like they were arresting tons of people, but they would go and take your plants. And for the Kootenays, that was like pretty devastating to have your crop taken. You know, like to me, like all my friends in the Kootenays were not driving Ferraris and living in mansions. They all had like nice little homesteads, and they were all like working really hard to get this crop out so that they could kind of have this money to invest into everything they needed for the next year.
So they could travel in the winter and enrich their life through cultures.
Yeah, well, and also, you know, like our patch was a 7.5 hour hike. That was like, you know, a really big hike. So we'd have to leave, you know, at dark. And if we wanted to get home, you know, having, you know, some kind of a farm home life with the animals and stuff at home, we'd have to leave at dark and then, you know, come back at dark. It was super intense and really amazing. But
Josh, Kelly, did you guys ever look at Korean natural farming early on? I was one of my first forays into just getting out of salts and looking deeper into the land. You guys, it was just really inspiring because at the time there was just nothing that I could read at all. There just was nothing. But then there was this, and there was books, and I really honed in on that. I'm curious to see if you guys maybe did similar things.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we first started growing cannabis, we learned about what was called weed teas. So, you put a garbage can in your garden, in your vegetable garden, and you take all of your weeds and you throw all of your weeds into basically is a liquid composter. So you're throwing them into water and you're liquid composting your plants. Well, then we started doing research on like all of the different cultures that do liquid composting. So the Japanese did liquid composting, all of the Europeans did liquid composting. We got a lot of those weed tea recipes even from some of the Quakers that live in our community up in this area. So they would even say, hey, if you do nettle and you do some chickweed. So we really started out our growing doing sort of this liquid herbal decoction
mixed
and
with raw materials going
kind of like a
mixed in with some
hybrid
manures.
thing.
Nobokashi's like, so basically what she's saying is in 99 we got here and we were following natural farming concepts without knowing the word natural farming.
Yeah, we had already been doing liquid composting and using herbal decoctions, and a lot of the tea recipes that we do today came from that, not necessarily from KNF. And then later we went to Hawaii
in 2008.
And Master Cho was doing a workshop, the very first workshop
on the Big
Island in Hawaii at that time. And he was talking about, all these KNF ideas. And we were like, whoa, that's sort of what we're already doing. That's really amazing. And then we sort of finited some of our skills with the LAB, adding LAB to it. So we took some little treasures and little gems from a lot of the old world farming practices. And we took some of those gems from KNF as well. We're not fully entrenched in KNF because we really want to do what's easiest for us, what works on our farm, what works for what we have growing, what type of biomass that we have growing. And we're really specific on what we bring in. We really don't bring in anything. We bring in a C90, which is a 90 trace mineral onto our farm. Other than that, we're 100% closed loop. So a lot of the KNF recipes ask to bring in things that just wasn't conducive for us is all. So we just continued on with a lot of the old school recipes that we had been doing since the beginning of our growing practices. And then again, finited it with KNF in 2008.
So like a hybrid, if you will, of all these different ideologies. And you really kind of borrowed from the things that you felt were important. And
I think
great.
Because we walked out 7.5 hours, so we really couldn't carry anything with us at all. So we had to really look at what type of herbs were out there that were good for different types of nutrients and different types of minerals. So with all of my herbology background, I know what has high magnesium, what has high cobalt, what has, high calcium. So we just started, doing tea ferments with those type of herbs in treating plants for whatever maladies and nutrients that they needed at the time.
I would just add one more thing really quick, which is, so all through the 90s, we're studying midwifery, right? We're studying plant teas
and naturopathic medicine
for women, right? We've already said this plenty of times and locally, but then we move up to, this faraway place. We're not citizens. We have to survive out in the mountains. We have to be underground. No one can know we live here, so we chose to take that as like, we're not going to the grocery store. So now we're living on the land. We're going to be self-sufficient homesteaders. We moved to one of the most, powerful places probably in all of British Columbia to do that, to be real. And we have this incredible root. So now we're like, we're going to grow gardens in this herbology midwifery style. We're going to do stuff like biodynamics. I mean, good God, since, forever, Rudolf Steiner has millions of pages on spiritual sacred cultivation. Our library in our community is filled with books of biodynamics, homesteading, stuff from Europe, stuff from Asia. And so we're engulfed in this. There's no internet, there's no way of communication. So that's part of our inoculation, let's say. So then we get into this growing on the hillside. And then we find this revelation, of Korean natural farming, and then we put all the parts together, and then we find, hugelkultur, and so one of our biggest things is unleash your dogma. Because when you become a KNF person, you think that you are in the dogma of life. Like, Korean natural farming has to be this way, or it's not actually Korean natural farming, or maybe even biodynamics. You can't be a Demeter certified farm unless you use biodynamic preps, which is all.
You can do all sorts of other things that don't make any sense. So I think what Josh means by unleashing your dogma is just do what works for your farm, accept other people's means and ways. If there's, natural processes that you're using, it's awesome. We say that you need closed loops with the DEM certification. Well, we hear about new closed loops every day. It's so awesome. The incredible creativity that people come up with to create natural closed loops by utilizing all these different modalities of ancient growing practices.
And now every year, all the time, it's just constantly validated. Give thanks. We love family.
Question for Dragonfly. If you were going to summarize what you're doing, or people who are listening, what they could do to optimize their soil health, wouldn't you say that, like, really what we're trying to do is capture the biology that's already happening on your soil, in your land, around you, and taking advantage of the inputs that are already there and just recognizing them for what they are, and building, again, not so much things like worm castings or any specific teas, but it's more about the biology, the microbiology, the microbiome, if you will, of fungus and bacteria and viruses, all of the various things that are happening. That's really what we're trying to enhance, if you will, with closed loop systems. And as my teacher on this kind of thing, I'd love to hear your thoughts on.
One of the number one reasons to do closed loop was, if it's not coming from your farm, where's it coming from? How did it get there? And what was it made from? So that was a thing that said, and maybe you live on a farm that doesn't have everything that you need on it, so there's maybe reasons that's why you want to grow different plants.
And also for the success of the farmer. So just to add real quickly, when you bring on things, we were noticing some OMRI listed things were not were failing tests for farmers. So we really wanted the ultimate success for farmers. Go ahead.
And just the idea that it puts you in a more self-reliant, more powerful place. Like, again, we have to look at to where we are in life right now. Are we reliant on the system to be healthy? Are we reliant on the system to create health and well-being in our soil? Well, we think it's more powerful not to.
Well, and I think if you're mimicking
we think it's more
nature,
powerful to get your power from nature, which has survived mass extinction in the past. So we're trying to ally with that survives. And microbiology is what survives. Science is a folly in the evolution of nature. So
it's very helpful with the evolution of nature, but we're always proving something different with science. It's
often
an ever-changing, end line. Where is the end line? And science is always changing the end line, but nature never really seems to change her end line. Her number one goal is to make soil. So if we want to mimic nature and what her closed loops are, then all of our number one goal is to make soil. So if we want to, continue on the path of what nature has shown us in her health and well-being, and being able to overcome such incredible amounts of opposition with what she's been thrown at by humanity and toxicity, then we can recognize that nature is able to detoxify almost everything. So why not utilize her as the main mentor, basically,
and enhance the ability of your plant to evolve? We're trying to give it more microbiology so that it can enhance its own medicine. So we feel like that's done through local raw materials.
I came to the practices you guys recommend through trying to make the cleanest possible version of cannabis so that we could make medicine. And that was really what it was all about for me. And yeah, I remember hearing about, I guess somebody was at that same event on the Big Island and a friend came back talking to me about KNF when I was still working indoors. It was an exciting concept, but I couldn't see how to make any of that work inside a warehouse in San Francisco. So
not to be confused with KFC.
For sure. Had one of those just down the street from the warehouse.
Also, it's also important to note that natural farming is not just from Korea. So like there's a whole natural farming modality from Japan, and all of the Asian countries, and again, all of the Asian countries. But EM, which is effective microorganisms, has been, has lactic acid bacteria, untreated purple non-sulfured bacteria, PNSB, and yeast. So EM is the yeast, the purple non-sulfured bacteria, and lactic acid bacteria. And you can do a million things. That's where you learn how to make bokashi. So, bokashi is locking in lactic acid bacteria and yeast and those most vigorous fermenting microbes and locking it into bran, right? But most of the bokashi originally, that people would cheap out and the bran would not be organic because they'd be like, oh, the microorganisms are going to change over the toxicity of the plant. No. And then also it would be like, oh, well, we're gonna activate EM, or we're gonna activate bokashi with non-organic molasses. And then you're just like, well, that's a horrible thing right there, because sugar in itself, when produced, is a terrible thing. So you have to be careful. Anyway, there's incredible manuals of farming modalities from the Philippines, from India, from Thailand, from Myanmar, Pakistan, all using just EM technology. So it's Dr. Churu Higa from Japan has incredible manuals on there. And there's Jadam, the newer manuals, using a lot of leaf molds and things. I think it's just use what you can to enhance your zone and try not to get caught up in things that you don't know about.
And a lot of these natural farming techniques are really to speed up what nature is already doing at a really slow rate, which is making a soil. It's creating a wonderful microbiology medium. And with all of these different modalities, it's speeding up the process so that we can farm and we can get those nutrients faster. It's sort of part of farming that, you want to be adding a lot of mulch rather than waiting for the mulch to come by the leaves falling. So, you're speeding up the process of getting rich soil and having healthier plants.
And hey, Mark Scialdone, how you doing? Maybe I don't know if you could talk about endophytic fungi and bacteria. Maybe you can, but part of living soils and all this crazy natural farming stuff is to create
a healthy
living
for the
plant to supposedly extract or to use in full. But I just wonder what you're up to, Mark, and what's happening with you.
Well, hey everybody. I was out in the gallery last week listening. I was what was I doing? Was I cleaning the house? But I listened last week. It was a good episode. And for some reason I didn't get the link, but I got it this week. So hi everybody. Great to see everybody. Part of the essential role that biology plays in the soil is because biology has figured out how to fix nitrogen from the air. And nitrogen is this wonderfully abundant gas that's in the oxygen in the air, or it's not in the oxygen, it's in the air we breathe. It's in the atmosphere. I think 79% is nitrogen, right? And it's pretty inert. It's pretty what we call inert. It's chemically inert. There are things that react with nitrogen, but for the most part, bacteria have figured out how to fix nitrogen. And the reason why that's important, and they don't spend a lot of energy doing it. That's the other important thing. So man's figured out how to fix nitrogen, but it costs a lot of petrochemical derived energy to do it. And that's something called the Haber process, which was basically how to turn nitrogen into ammonia which created liquid fertilizers that began the whole, use of chemicals to fortify soil. I think Josh and Kelly will agree that bacteria have long since figured this out, because they've been playing chemistry in Mother Nature's lab here for billions of years. But Franz Haber did. I mean, it was important at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution when they figured out how to fix nitrogen, because it started the whole chemical industry, mostly again for making liquid fertilizers, because they just hadn't figured out regenerative farming at the time. They actually did, but they didn't know it, right? And it's funny, Josh, the point you made about making stinky fish broth, and that's how you can grow stinky weed. For us kids who were out on Grateful Dead tour during the 80s, for a lot of us, Grateful Dead tour was where we went out and we got our stinky weed. And yeah, I remember talking to some growers who were like, man, we take everything from the apple orchard and we take everything from our garden, and we make this compost of just the richest, darkest soil you could possibly imagine. And in that, they created, these really aromatic varieties of weed that would fill arenas on East Coast Dead tours with the smoke of NorCal, right? And so, yeah. So
I would also say Southern Oregon, just saying.
Well,
Oregon.
On
truth in that.
Garcia. Well, and the Dead were connected to Oregon because, as you know, like Ramrod and Sparky and most of the crew, they were all from Oregon, and Kesey, they were all from Oregon. So the tricksters,
Carolyn Garcia.
That's right. So the Grateful Dead scene down in the Bay and Oregon was connected. And yeah, I mean, you guys are connected with Mountain Girl, and Mountain Girl wrote one of the first seminal textbooks on regenerative growing. And is that right? Can I say that? Is that right?
It's definitely right.
Absolutely.
1976, the Primo plant.
And it's specific to cannabis,
And
regenerative cannabis.
That was one of the books we sold.
Specific to regenerative growing, like there wasn't a.
Oh yeah, no. Her father is a botanist. She came from growing. She loves weed. She's super inquisitive. She's an awesome person.
What a cool time in Grateful Dead history, because that's right when Trixie and Annabelle were young kids, and Jerry they were living in Stinson Beach, and Jerry was in. What?
They had gone and left and gone up to Oregon at that time because there was so many. They had got that there's like issues in California, and they were fleeing. They had kind of left the California scene and lived on the coast over in Port Orford and lived over in the beach. So a lot of that was written while they were had kind of left the scene or whatever and went up to Oregon and things. So.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's all connected.
It was still just a wonderful time of all kinds of things going on in the scene, and me being a young kid from the East Coast. I mean, again, a lot of us, it was for many years easier to get things like cocaine from New York City. You could just drive over the George Washington Bridge and go get a little sack of cocaine, go back to your suburban party in New York City. And the only weed that you can get was this little manila envelope, which was chock full of seeds and stems. It was just the worst thing in the world. But on Dead Tour, we had stinky green bud from the West Coast. I know I've said it a bunch of times on Hash Church, but
hey, that's where the chem dog came
It's pretty cool because I was slinging the kind bud. I mean, that's how I made my way through University of Oregon. Thank you very much for the degree, everybody, off the kind bud. But little did I know that kind bud was DJ Short's blueberry strains, and that was all coming from him and his
old world genetics.
Eugene.
and Marcus will tell you that easily transitioned from kind of like the Grateful Dead scene over to Fish. Fish was certainly the people who took the torch from the Grateful Dead and carried it on, because again, you can go on Fish scene and you can get really kind, stinky nugs in the mid 90s, right, Mark? And it wasn't Beasters. You know, when you guys were talking about Beasters before, that's funny because I remember people slinging Beasters on Fish Lot and be like, yeah, let's, you know, it looked good. It just it wasn't as good as all the other shit. And that's right around the time that, again, Chem Dog really started taking off, Sour Diesel started taking off, the late to mid 90s. And then, you know, right around that time, I would say that, you know, again, is there, again, a sort of like a next generation that sort of took really good weed and made sure that, you know, it was just distributed to the masses, or,
Well, I'll tell you,
know, music or things that were cultural icons that brought people in and were like, holy shit, did you smell that weed? That's not like the shit that we get at home. Let's go buy some weed. So people would go to the shows, stock up on weed and go home. Right?
it was a dangerous time, I would like to say, because first of all, great weed stinks loud. And you'd go to these shows in the early to mid 90s on the East Coast, the Midwest, even on the West Coast to a degree, but more so in places like Montana and even Spokane, but like on the East Coast, all these different shows in New York. Cops would literally sit in buildings around the parking lots with walkie-talkies and then literally just have people get busted on the lot. Like, it was a dangerous game we were playing, and yet you couldn't not go and play the game. It was
the beautiful thing was in the parking lot, if anyone was ever identified as a narc, there would be probably 15 people walking around the dude going, narc, 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 this guy's a narc, this guy's a narc.
On Fish Tour, it was 6 up. Six up. Six up meant there were cops heading your way. They could be undercover, they could be uniformed, but if you heard that 6 up, it was like a wave traveling with them as they walked down.
Shakedown, everything would roll right up, man. You just watch everybody just fold their shit up and start stepping. Yeah. And serious.
How key do you think those years, you know, the Grateful Dead touring years, and then like Mark, like the years that you were on Fish Tour and like the mid 90s into this next millennium, how important do you think that those years were in the proliferation of really good herb out to the masses of people, right?
So
Don't
important.
you think it was important, right?
Along with psychedelic mushrooms and LSD.
Gotta add it in there.
I used to walk around Fish Lot late 90s with Overgrow flyers and hand them out to get people stoked on going and learning about growing. I was that just passionate about the plant. It was just, people thought I was crazy. Like, what are you doing? Why are you printing these things? Like, Scoosh actually sent me a flyer from Overgrow to hand out. And I was like, look, I'm going to go to all these shows and I want to pass this out. I feel like we need to share this. Like, people need to know there's knowledge out there that you can learn.
I would send Slinger with bubble bags on the, you know, to the Great Went or to like these huge fish. And I'd be like, just take like 100 kits, you know, I'll give you 100. And he'd be like, all right, bro. All right. And just like young Slinger, you know, trying to like with 100 kits of bubble bags and fucking meeting the whole crew. Or we're going to Seminole for the New Year's show. And Marcel brought the Fish 2000 pipe and just
so there were bubble bags that were sold at the parking lots of fish shows. Was that what I'm hearing here?
Oh yeah, dude. 100%. 99, man.
So
like
there's hash that's been made from bubble bags sold at the parking lot of fish shows.
I used to
there's hash that's been made. There's hash that's been made in the parking lot of fish shows.
I bartered personally bubble hash for tickets, literally.
Dude, you could go to a fish show with nothing but 6-star bubble and you have everything.
You do. This is the truth.
Dr. Mark, I would say for sure back in the day, like when I was in West Virginia, all we would get is pressed Mexican Coca-Cola. So when we heard about good weed, we heard the Dead would come through, my ass would go up to Pittsburgh and just roll through Shakedown Street And I'd get grief. They'd be like, sorry, motherfucker, you're bald. I'm like, no, I'm not a narc. I'm not a cop. I just want some fucking your gassy fucking weed. And once I got turned on to that weed, and then when we were back, when I finally
But
made
you
it
didn't
out to
stay for the
California.
show. You turned around and went home, right? You didn't
Well, no,
stay
I
for
never
the
did the shows. No. I only went for the
man.
drugs. I wasn't into the music. I was a punk, you know. I had my vest, I had my boots on and my braces. I was a sharp skinheads against racial prejudice. So we beat up Nazis. But you still roll in bald. They're like, you're a fucking cop. I'm like, no, I'm in the military. I'm in the National Guard, but I need some weed because I'm a patient now. But you can't really talk about that because there's so much fucking music and people are like, shrooms, weed, bud. So, you gotta, it's so tricky back then. But when we got to California, and then of course we're here at the Dead shows, when I was with the Cannabis Action Network, they would let us set up legally on Shakedown Street.
Right.
And then they would let us go inside and gather signatures. And that's how I met Bear and everybody else. But even still back then, when I was with Ken and I was bald behind the thing, they'd be like, you sure you're not a cop? I'm like, I'm on Shakedown. There'd be 30 people around me yelling narc right now. And they'd look around and people would be like, yeah. Oh yeah, we would fuck that. That's how justice goes here. He'd be fucking shunned the fuck off. But look, seriously,
You're what's known
if
as
it
a
had
bald
not been
head
for
dread.
the dead lot and going around and traveling around, I do not think we would see the proliferation of cannabis and the high quality of cannabis in the time that we did, because there was no understanding that quality was there. And once I had tried it from somebody who had a dead lot, when I was in fucking West Virginia, I was like, I got to go to a fucking Dead show and get some fucking weed, because that's where real weed is. Because whatever I'm getting and selling isn't real fucking weed.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So
just how
many
it is.
people.
You're a bald head dread.
Yes, totally bald dread. Yes, that's what it called me. Yes.
So many
Awesome.
times I would go out onto Dead Tour with beautiful Kind Bud, and people didn't even know that it was weed. No joke. Way back in like the early 90s, late 80s, I'd have a nice sack of weed and people would be like, that's not weed. What are you trying to sell me? What is that? I'd be like, no, it's Kind Bud. This is really weed. And
Or the first time
they
you
didn't
smoked
even
keef
really
at
know
country
it was.
store.
Or the first time
that
that people
you?
had ever seen keef, or just when you're just separating. So, before there was bubble, there was keef, and people were using keef. And at Dead Tour, you would get these little teeny tiny, gorgeous pressed blocks, tiny little pressed blocks of keef. That was so exciting, to be able to smoke that and feel that high.
I remember
blast.
that well. I actually, when I got busted back in the late 90s with many pounds of cannabis, I had a little rock of beautiful keef that was just like clean keef that was like rocked up. And they thought it was crack cocaine. They tested it until it was gone, and then I couldn't get charged for that particular batch. But it reminds me what you just said of when I first started posting on Overgrow in 1999, bubble hash. And people would be like, that looks like Mr. Whippy mouse shit. Like, there's no way that that's hash. Like, people didn't know. And when I put it in their pipes and it would bubble and boil and melt into a liquid, they would just be like, what the fuck is that? Like, is that some like that? I don't think that was hash that guy smoked with us. Plus, back then, because it was so unknown, it used to, and maybe Sam could agree with me, I don't see people getting knocked out the way I used to. People used to fall like flies when they smoked bubble for the first time. And I'm sure Sam has stories of his dry sift way before bubble was even a glimmer in the eye.
Yeah, but to tell you the truth, even cannabis back in those days, I saw people smoke original haze in the early 70s, and they would turn white and pass out or throw up. So, it's just the relative. If you're used to smoking, 10%, and all of a sudden you hit something that's, 50, 60, 70, 80, it is. You'll turn white, you'll turn pale, your heart, you've seen it happen a million times.
Well, not only that, you also had a huge proliferation because people weren't just going to smoke this amazing weed and hash just out of anything. This is when the Snodgrass and everything started to appear. I mean, Johnny B is showing his huge chalice over here. I mean, this was a huge proliferation. I mean, if it wasn't for the dead lot and the turning on the fish scene, I mean, how would the glass, a whole art thing that is taken off, that is a whole underground art movement here in America. I mean, it would have never taken hold. I mean, Snodgrass was the one. I mean, guys would always whip out and say, "Oh, this is a snotty. This pipe costs $1,200." You're like, "Holy shit! Seriously? You spend how much on a glass pipe?"
This is an original Snodgrass right here. Actually, this was gifted to me by a friend of mine. I've had this since mid '90s. I've had this.
That's very valuable.
This to me is very valuable to me. People have asked me how much, and I'm like, there is no price on my soul.
Nah. We need to get Bob on here. Let's get Bob on.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
And Carolyn Garcia.
And Carolyn, I'm telling you, she phoned me a while ago and was like, "Hey, am I still going to come on Hash Church?" I was like, "Who is this?"
I love this piece. This is such a beautiful.
She's like, "It's Josh and Kelly's friend, Caroline." I'm like, "Caroline." I'm like, "Caroline, who?"
I've never been to a fish concert, and when I was in Mexico in 2017, and it was Cancun, I was in just outside of Mexico, and there was a fish concert there, and I was on the suite at the front where there was no one in front of me, just the ocean. It's 8 a.m. I'm down there, and I hear this Johnny fucking B, and the girls were, she's just like, "Are you kidding me?" And I go out there, and there's all these people from Fish that I've never met before, and I met them all because of Hash Church, and they're all like, Johnny B, and it just felt so amazing. And at that time, and where I was in Mexico, I met Marco Arendas, and I actually picked up this pipe that was blown at a fish concert by Slinger and got his hat on here and stuff like that. And I brought it home because it was a memory that had to come back to Canada. That's the way I looked at it. So it's just pretty cool to see.
Show that pipe a little bit.
I was going to comment on your hat. The Slinger hat caught me in the immediate.
Oh, this was made at a Grateful Dead concert. This is, from what I understand, this is a Slinger. This is a collab. This is because someone's torches were stolen or something.
No. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Let me think about that. We got to get Slinger and some of the glass community on here one day as well. Bob. Someone mentioned it in the chat.
Yeah. So this is some epic piece that I know a little about, but not too much. But I know Dave knows a lot about it, and so does Real High Integrity, and they told me some cool stuff about it. And they're like, "This is a classic." So I'm about ready to smoke some bubble out of this thing for the first time ever with you guys.
I remember when Jason Lee figured out that particular weld and showed Slinger. And I remember when they all started doing it. It was during Overgrow days, actually. And they would do, first they did the double bubbler, then they did the triple, then they did the quad, then they did the 5, and then they did the sextupler. And I bought them all. I had the sextupler. I ended up selling that to Drum from Amsterdam. Ended up fixing it one day because it got broken there, and he did a pretty good job fixing it. But instead of cleaning it, he just heated it up while it was all still dirty, and so it fumed the gold clear glass, so it was almost like this metallic black. It looked pretty cool. I think maybe like Soma or Gypsy Nirvana or one of those characters ended up with that piece. But
I know there's several glass blowers on this one because this is a certain blower.
That's D-Rec at the back there. That marble looks like Slinger. That's a uranium marble. I have a few of those very same ones. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Slinger would have done that for sure.
There's a piece that went in here like some kind of a tool that's, I guess maybe because now I just put a little sword in there, but yeah, it's definitely it chugs nicely.
Marcus, what year did you first smoke homegrown? Here we go.
Geez, the first year I smoked homegrown.
With me, it was 69 or 70.
It would have been 87 for me.
90 for me.
1987. Wow. How time flies. I've told the story quite a few times.
Wow, that hit really nicely. That was awesome.
93 for me.
Early 80s for me because it was all homegrown.
Yeah, and me was all Mexican. And then in Arizona, and I didn't really get any awesome good weed until I started smoking on Matanuska Thunderfuck. in 1988. So that was the best homegrown
My
that I had gotten.
my parents are some friends with some of the original growers in Southern Oregon.
Yeah,
So
original Matanuska.
we had giant, big, fat kind bud colas and by the late 70s, by the mid to late 70s, and I have pictures of my family holding it and stuff, and is definitely awesome. I'm lucky I never went through the era of not having good weed around ever. Like, wow, how lucky is that? Another thing is beyond Grateful Dead was the barter fair lots, barter fairs. So barter fairs were a really big deal.
A lot of the seeds were...
And Tenasket in Washington was where, the US and Canada met up, and the Tenasket Barter Fair was really cool. But, hey, family, we got to take off right now. We're going to go help some local Kootenai growers out. We're going to go help trim out some Black Doe Lotto, some Blackberry Kush by the Do-Si-Do, by the Gelato from the Jordan of the Islands Seed Bank, and
down at Twin Feathers Farm. And we're also working a lot on getting something up to all of Canada in the medical realm up online. So we'll be letting you all know about that as soon as that starts happening. And again, Marcus and everybody, you make my week, you make my day. When I'm having whatever, I think about Hash Church and I think of all of your shining faces and the people that you all are. And I just have so much love for all of you, and Marcus, what you have put on all of these years, and the incredible honoring of the cannabis plant that just continues to happen on this show is just second to none. Thank you so much.
And big up Mark for the Hash Church strain. Nice work, brother. Yeah. Big up on you. We'll be stoked if we get to put that in our yard this year. Big up everyone out in the crowd, every other podcast that's ever happened, every other person putting education first. Let's make this world a better place. The government's not here to serve us. We're here to serve us. We love you. Give us a call if you need anything. Be healthy.
We're always available to anybody that ever has any questions or anything. Hit us up always. We just want to help out as much as we possibly can. We're servants of this plant, just like so many of you all out there watching.
Resist the military industrial complex. I love you.
Nice.
Thanks, guys.
I like it. Good words dropped from the Dragonfly Earth Medicine, Josh and Kelly. Always.
Marcus, I wanted to talk about bog for a second, if that's all right.
Yes, I would love for you. I wanted to talk about bog as well. And seeing as we talked about Overgrow and all those characters, we got to talk about bog. One of the OGs.
Yeah. So for those of you guys out there that don't know, Bog was an incredible breeder, activist, grower, family guy, beautiful human being, gifted so many seeds, probably more seeds were gifted by him than he sold. And we lost him this past year to complications we don't know about, but wanted to let everybody know that James Bean, Seeds Here Now, and a bunch of other people like me and Gene from Freeborn Selections, and I think Ms. Jill's involved, and James Loud, and all these different individuals are all coming together to do bids for Bog. So if you guys are on IG, please go follow Bids for Bog, and there's amazing gear going up every single day to benefit his wife, Pat. And I think that it would be a really great thing for everybody in this community that follows Hash Church and everything that's going on here to get involved and to help. It's a hard time out there, and I think, the least we could do is try to support a fellow community member and their family when we can.
Let's light one up for Bog, everybody. Let's have a nice round of bong rips all the way around.
No.
Everybody for the second time.
I'll puff to that.
Puff to Jim. Bog. Bog's varieties were really easy to grow for those of you guys that are out there that are new. And even experienced growers, like Sour Bubble is an incredible variety, great hash maker, and something that you guys can all kind of put in your garden and really it'll accentuate anything you have in there, whether it's a newer gelato or an older super skunk or a skunk.
Well, when I met him years and years ago here in Amsterdam, his most famous at that time was Bubblegum.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
bog
he had
bubble,
a nice bubble gum, that is for sure. I puffed
one of
some
the
full
best.
melt on that more than a few times with bog.
What do you what's everybody puffing on? What are you puffing on, Marcus?
I am puffing on some concentrated X. It is the cookies and cream. And if you take a really close-up shot, it kind of looks like macaroni and cheese, or it kind of looks like some other crazy shit. It is absolutely fucking stellar hash rosin. Le top, if I was telling my French friends, it is absolute damn near perfection. Shout out to Concentrated X. That's what's going into my banger. And I'm going to do a cold start because why not?
I like the cold start. So I'm puffing on. This is the Medi Kush that I did the fresh frozen from my last grow. And with this one, I put it in the freeze dryer. And it was all, so this is the 7390 N120. I was going to press it, but it melts, so I'm not pressing it. So I've been smoking it. So longer.
Next up.
So happen. Oh, go ahead.
Go, Mark.
Just so happens, fellas, I got a little bit of Hash Church flower rosin. It's all buttered up nice. Just a tiny little bit I pressed this morning. It buttered us up pretty much instantly.
Mine did the same thing and looked the exact same color, super light.
Yeah. And just to clarify, Etienne, there earlier you asked me about the yield on it, and I kind of fucked that up. I'm getting about in a 4x4 area, whether it's a single plant or 4 plants, I'm getting about just under a pound. So not too bad, but not the best.
No, that's still solid for what you're getting reaping in trikes, you know.
I got some Illuminati Star Dog here. I guess my background is just unbelievable. Illuminati Star Dog and garlic, and then I also have a little lemon cake here. 90, 120, and then I also have some 73 right here.
So I was interested because I was listening last week, and you guys were talking about the Hash Church strain, and that's really cool that there's actually one that exists. So as you know, what makes these strain, I don't like using the word strain, variety, cultivar, whatever, chemovar, what makes these things unique are the phytochemical profile. So what's the cannabinoid profile and the terpene profile in this new variety here? Do we know?
So what I've had tested so far, and it's been at a fairly small lab, so it's not a commercialized lab by any means. They do have good equipment, but what I've gotten so far is just the THC test back, and it come back at 26.3%. I'm just waiting on the terpenes to come back at this point.
Right. So that's the only cannabinoid that shows up in the cannabinoid profile of the biomass of the plant material.
Well, I actually had it tested through a friend of mine, and that's pretty much the only thing that they've given me so far. They were supposed to be doing a full profile of terpenes on it here shortly.
Yeah, typically they'll do a profile of at least no less than 7 of the major cannabinoids, because they all have hopefully standards in their HPLC to tell you what the minor profile. And yeah, you'd expect, because it's a strain that gets you high, you kind of know it's got THC in it. So what makes it unique are all the other minor cannabinoids that are around the THC, not necessarily the THC.
I think what's even more important.
I couldn't agree more.
Is the terpenes.
Yeah, and well, the terpenes too. Yeah, the entire phytochemical profile, which includes the terpenes. But
when you look at most smoking marijuana, it's basically just THC with little or none of the minor terpenes or cannabinoids. Excuse me.
That's not true at all. That's not. That's not that. You're not looking at data of commercial cannabis, and that's just not true at all. There's a whole bunch of the minor cannabinoids that are in there, as much as a fraction to a single-digit percent of CBC, CBG. There's varieties that are out there that are 2-to-1, 6-to-1, 7-to-1 CBD. I mean, CBD is all throughout the commerce chain now.
But
So
most of those weren't bred. Most of those weren't bred for to be smoking marijuana. They're a newer variety with medical, because when you look at the traditional analysis, it's really just THC with little of the other cannabinoids until indica or widely started being used, because it had a lot of the minor cannabinoids, but ganja, Thai stick, Colombian, stuff like that, was really just mostly THC, a little bit of other things.
Yeah, well, it depends what you mean by a little bit. So today's HPLC methods pick up what that little bit is, and what that little bit ends up being, a few percent. And a few percent.
So I mean, like
an argument I've made about looking at the picture of the Mona Lisa from across the street. You kind of know there's THC in there, right? So forget about the woman in the picture. Look at everything else, and everything else is, yes, the terpene profile, the cannabinoid profile. We know these things are monsters that create a lot of THC. You kind of got to look beyond the THC to really find the real unique.
Right, but also you got to remember something else, Mark. The other cannabinoids don't get you high, and they have very minor.
That's, yeah. So, but they have this, entourage, or what do we call it on this show?
Ensemble effect.
Ensemble
but
effect.
Very less
the ensemble
than
effect.
The terpene populate way more.
Well, I tell you what, though, I mean, I hear this more and more, and again, because I've been doing lots of work in the hemp space, there's real thing when it comes to that minor cannabinoid profile that's in full spectrum oils that just aren't in isolates. And I've seen it. I've gotten testimony, feedback on products where they're like, oh yeah, it's all about, there is some full spectrum biological efficacy. And that's why I ask about the minor cannabinoid profile, because I think there is something about the minor cannabinoid profile that drives that full spectrum.
You're both right. You're just talking about different things. Of course, what you're saying, Mark, is totally true. And Sam himself is one of the people who started that discussion in early 2000 when he had all the variety of.
First one analyzing.
Definitely, you were, no doubt about it. Yet I also see where Sam's coming from, where he's looking about getting high. He's just looking for that rip that gets him high. And when he says those other minor cannabinoids, they don't do anything for that particular thing in him, but that's not to say that a full spectrum oil is not going to be more appreciated from a medical patient suffering from some sensitive disorder like a Crohn's.
And I can appreciate that really easily, that medical people have different priorities and different needs and different wants.
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
I almost think of it like almost like a volume issue, in that people who listen to music at a lower volume than you do, Sam, those minor things make a difference. And so people who use less THC, who have like a lower tolerance than, say, like heavy users than us, people who use a lot, maybe that doesn't really impact, but people who are lighter users, I think that minor cannabinoid profile and that full spectrum bioefficacy is a real thing.
I will also add that in Canada, I've seen so many COAs, I can't even explain how many COAs I've seen. And they are very often not ripe with minor cannabinoids. It seems to be more often than not, it's a decent terpene profile, and then it's going to be THC somewhere between 12 and 28% or something like that. And this is in the legal.
Itself?
What's that, Mark?
He's right here.
On your test results on biomass, on plant material?
Yeah, of course. We can't process anything until we see.
Okay, so what you're just talking about
the COA on.
Sorry, Mark. So talk about these different. You're talking about cannabinoids. So here's here's something that's 240 milligrams. Now, these don't do anything to me. I took a couple of them last week. I got a little bit of anxiety from it, but most people, these are flooring them. Someone like Sam and myself, I was talking about this. I think the CBD is blocking those different, and those different cannabinoids are, because I mean, this is a full profile, basically. This is what I'm using for my pain right now. And this seems to be working, and it doesn't get me high. It just actually helps ease my pain. So, I mean, these are the different cannabinoids that we will be talking about, all right?
I wanted to just do a clarification for those who are watching. As you know, Dr. Mishulam says it's the entourage effect. But if you actually look at nomenclature, entourage is just a group of people arriving together. Whereas ensemble is exactly like listening to an orchestra. If you're listening to one note, you hear the horns, but when you hear the whole orchestra, that's the ensemble. And so that's why I and others have coined the phrase the ensemble effect. So just to clarify for new people who are watching who are saying entourage. So just wanted to clarify.
So I wanted to bring up a thing. I sent a COA number over to you, Marcus, that was 101.75 came back from.
I remember that was great job, dude.
Separating.
Great job for breaching the laws of everything.
Breaching the laws of redefining physics. Yeah. So I just wanted to just talk about this idea because I think there's a lot of nuance with all these terms and things that we have, and pop culture seems to move way faster than science, and for some reason in this field. So Dr. Mark, in your professional opinion, where does 101.75 really make sense? I know that there's minors put in there, but when the THCA comes back at 98.98, and then there's like all these other minors, it just feels odd to read that and then put that on a package for a patient. Because I just feel like we're at a 0 to 100 range. At what point do we feel like it's okay to have the liberty to go beyond these lines? And what does that really mean? Because TAC, we know, means absolutely nothing. There's so much more to the ensemble, and as you really beautifully put it, the dynamics, if you're using recording instruments, for an example, you want to record things at a low level with great compressors and EQs and and all that dynamics really adds to the overall experience to that sound. So what's your take on that?
So there's two things you got to consider. So when you're trying to measure potency, when you're trying to measure the amount of a cannabinoid, either like in hash or in flower, it's 90% of it is how you prepare the sample. And so like in a typical HPLC method, you would take something like about a couple 100 milligrams of material, and you have to weigh it out. Like you can't weigh out just, well, this is almost 200 milligrams. It has to be 200.12 milligrams. It can't be 200.13 or 2. That level of precision will have an impact on the measurement you're making, because what you're doing is you're taking that measured amount of stuff, and then you're going to do a number of dilutions to it. And every time you do a dilution to it, you basically are I was going to say diluting it, right? You're making it less concentrated until it gets down to the level of concentration that your machine is calibrated to read. Now, these machines separate things. I know, Marcus, we've talked about HPLC a lot on Hash Church, and we've had people like the fellow from SC Labs, his name's escaping me right now. Alec, yeah. People talk about HPLC, but how an HPLC works is there's a column that you take this diluted solution of your sample, and the sample goes through the column, and the column, think of it like a water filter cartridge, like that's on your refrigerator if you have filtered water that comes through your refrigerator or your house or wherever. So as the solution goes through there, the cannabinoids have a different affinity for sticking to the packing material, which is called the column, and they elute out the other end of the column, and there's something called a detector that's looking at a particular wavelength in the ultraviolet spectrum that knows what wavelength each of the individual cannabinoids absorb at. And so there's something that they call standards. And so in order to calibrate this machine properly, what they do is you have to buy a standard of each of the individual purified cannabinoids, right? And then you take that standard, and again, you do what's called serial dilutions, which basically dilutes the concentration of that standard, and you inject this into your HPLC column. And what you see is, yes, Johnny's showing one right there. What you see is that there's a linear response between the amount of material that comes out and that dilution that you've made. And you read what's called a calibration curve, because the intensity that the detector picks up of the compounds coming out of the column is directly proportional to how much of that compound is in there. And so for like 2,500 ppm, you'll get a signal up here. And then for like 500 ppm, you'll get a signal down here. And then for like 100 ppm, it'll be down here. And so you'll draw what's called a calibration curve. And now what you can do with your calibration curve, yes, Johnny's showing a chromatogram here. So Johnny can now take the peak heights from that, which is called the chromatogram, which is the reading of the detector as the compounds come out of the HPLC, go to your calibration curve and say, if that peak, which is exactly that high, is that reads this on the calibration curve, then the concentration is this. You back it out through your dilution calculation. You can calculate how much cannabinoid is actually in a sample. So you can see with all the mathematics that you need to do there and all of the manipulation of the sample itself, right? Because you have to weigh out exactly to the, 0.00001 gram, precision. So that means you need an analytical balance right there that costs like what? $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I mean, those are not cheap. The HPLC machines, most of them run somewhere between maybe $25,000, $30,000. You could get them used for less than that, but the really good ones with the detectors, and then you have to buy the standards, and the standards are really expensive because the labs that make the standards have to have a Schedule I license because they have to have a lot of that material, and then they dilute it down to the level that the DEA says is okay to ship off as a standard. And a little bottle like this, right, Johnny, costs like $1,000. It's really expensive.
It's really expensive, but at the same time, you just can't buy it. Not anyone can buy it. So not only you have to buy it from
no, if it's diluted, you can buy it.
I was lucky, just the way things worked.
And that's why
you need a license. They don't just give those standards out to anybody. And then there's another thing is that, even these instrument manufacturers, I mean, they will not, unless you can show that you have a license to operate in your state legally, they're not going to sell you this instrumentation because they don't want to be liable for some clandestine operation. And so it's important, I guess, to have standardized testing and all this, but you can see that it's really easy to come up with a result that's 101%, because what that means is that somewhere along the lines, in the sample preparation, most likely, or in the mathematics that takes the raw data that the machine measures and converts it into milligram per gram cannabinoid or percent weight or whatever measurement unit you're using, all of that is going to be impacted on the sample that the machine measures. The machine just is measuring its thing. And then you have to assume that these machines get clogged. If people don't know what they're doing, there's all kinds of crap that goes in there. We use these 2-micron syringe filters that are really useful to filter out any crap because you don't want any crap going in there. And if you're testing a lot of biomass that already has a lot of fats, waxes, and lipids, it's really advisable to put what's called a guard on your column. And what that does is it extends the lifetime of your column because it keeps a lot of the high molecular weight shit from gumming up your column. Because once
Mark, this material was solventless THCA that I had extracted mechanically, so it came back that high. I just felt like I just couldn't. I just don't. It's like tall tales to me, you know?
Yes. So if your sample doesn't have fats, waxes, or lipids, it's probably best to dissolve that in methanol. But like Johnny was seeing, when you dissolve samples that have fats, waxes, and lipids in methanol, Johnny, remember this? We were seeing those white floaties in there. That's those fats. Yeah, that's
I learned this
2 years ago.
years ago, and it was interesting. The way I had to figure it out is because then I had put it in hexane, and the hexane melted the fats, right? And so I saw that, and they thought it was stuff coming from the parchment. So then I called the parchment people, and they're like, "There's no fucking way the parchment is breaking down," and that had to do with the rosin back then. So it was a lot of fat when we were squishing it at temperatures.
So what that says is that part of what you weighed out as part of your analytical sample is that fats, waxes, and lipids that aren't being included. So that whole measurement is just that you can't quantify anything based on that. But here's the thing now, like if you use something like acetone or something to dissolve all that stuff, now you're ramming all that shit into those columns cost about $1,000 a piece, or they're expensive. And the machine you're running it on is like, a $20,000 machine. And there's, so again, answer your question, Colin, lots of places for that error to occur. But if you're looking to do like a purity analysis where you need to get like absolute, you have to do a lot of testing to develop a relationship with a lab. And I would say the Alec's operation SC is probably one of the more better ones. I don't know, Etienne, if you would agree, but I would say the SC in general, the Steep Hill lab that we work with over here in Maryland, they're really good.
Steep Hill's
there are
great.
some labs that are really hit and miss, because I've seen results on stuff that I know that we've already tested, and other people tested are like, this is what we're saying. I'm like, hey, you know what? We have the data to support it, right? I mean, that's what's good about the HPLC, is that if your analytical methods are all proper and you have everything that you need to do, you could challenge the result of some marginal lab. Now, what we found is that some labs are in high throughput mode. You know why? Because their business model is to run as many fucking samples through that lab as they possibly can. Do they give a shit whether it's 0.2, 0.8, 0.9? They don't give a flying fuck. They just want to get the report and get their money. That's it, right? So not us. We're a little more careful because we need to make sure, especially in hemp operations, that we're totally compliant. And you know what that means? That means that your THC is compliant right at that 0.3 level. And, you're putting your business at risk if you don't know what the hell it is you're sending out the door, because that stuff can be confiscated, or other people are using those products, again, to formulate into soaps or tinctures or whatever. And if it's not at the right level, then that means their doses aren't at the right level neither. So it's really important to have accurate testing all along the way.
The lab that I use is a well-known lab. I don't this particular one, that's why it's surprising to me. And it was just the whole thing surprising. And I see a lot, because I'm always sending samples out, like yourself. You just had to ask.
I just told these are safe, but here's these old samples. This is kind of some memories for me. These are old. So here's the little boxes they used to come in. They used to come from Switzerland. We had to order them through a different company, sent to a different address. They were so
I hope you're
hard
keeping those in the freezer, Johnny.
Oh, these ones, I have samples in my fridge, the ones I had from HPLC. And these are just the boxes from like 1988. That's how old these are. Yeah, these are from like 1988. And like I said,
this is from 1988. Oh my God.
Yeah, the other ones I have are in the fridge. I got those in like 2012, but these are when I first started working with Paul with the HPLC, and he taught me a lot of just how to use it, how to call everything you talked about. Just put me into memories of looking at all those different peaks and profiles and all the different strains, and really chasing those profiles and seeing what was happening with all the different strains. It was interesting to learn that knowledge. So thanks for that memory.
Oh, well, that's why we had to bring somebody in internationally who made the solutions. So that's why we did that. And he taught us how to then suspend it in 100% alcohol. And so we had a standardized methodology Right. So that we could actually, because we were just going for THC originally. Remember, that's where we started. Yeah. See, there's the old Sigma samples. Because we were looking at that originally and we are like, oh my God. And then they wanted to know who we were, because this is way before testing. We weren't a lab, we were a dispensary. And they're like, get the fuck out of here with that shit. So that's when we realized, when I started asking Ethan Russo and all the other experts, I was like, okay, who can I pull to actually test? But my question goes to Sam. So you were originally testing for THC, I guess, originally, and then when did the other cannabinoids start to get added? When did you start to add CBD?
From the beginning, we were testing for at least the top 10 cannabinoids.
So you had those standards.
Yes, we had them all legally, and also too we had more than, I think, 54 of the terpenes. And that was, very early in the late 80s, we were doing that.
Because see, we had to start with THC, and then when we had THC, then we found that secondary spikes, and then we did research and found that was CBD. But we didn't have any of the standards of CBG, CBN, or any of that. Well, so we've had to add that. So it's quite amazing. I thought it would have been a step-by-step process, but to know that you had access to them is kind of mind-blowing.
No, we just bought them all. We had THCV, CBC, CBG, the propyl homologs of all those. I mean, we had them all.
How did you know to have those and which ones to have versus ones not to have?
Well, I didn't know which ones were which, but since I had them all, I tried them all, and I found out that
it was known. The HPLC characterization of cannabis extracts was reported actually by Canadians in the early 60s. And so this was actually just prior to Meshulam's paper in 64 on the structural elucidation. So HPLC fractionation of the cannabinoids was known. That method was known. HPLC was new. HPLC didn't exist.
How old is
as we know it? I mean, this is such cool, because if you look at it's really interesting. I wrote an article that I think is being published on the thing that I think I've talked about on Hash Church, which is the group from England that first isolated THC in the late 1800s. So in 1896 is the first reported isolation by vacuum distillation of THC distillate. And if you look at no, not Todd. No, Todd was a contemporary of Adams in the 30s. No, man, this is in the 1890s. This is Wood, Spivey, and Easterfield.
Oh yeah, I've got that paper.
Yeah. Didn't I send you the preprint that I wrote on this, Dave? Dave, sorry.
I think I sent you one of their papers you didn't have too.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, if you go back, and it's such a fascinating story, the pre-Meshulam THC chemistry, and the way it happened. And so this group from England, in fact, one of the guys died, I think, before the paper actually came out. Wood, Spivey, and Easterfield. Still, the stuff that they characterized as toxic red oil, and the way they describe it just like THC distillate would be. It's very sticky, and they called it toxic. But to them, toxic really was just short for intoxicating. It wasn't toxic like the way that we think of the word toxic now. It was the intoxicating oil, the intoxicating fraction. And they thought it was actually cannabinol, and they did elemental studies and they called it cannabinol. And when you do elemental studies, what you're actually doing is you're actually burning a little bit of the material. And when you burn carbon containing material, it goes to carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, right? So from calculation, how much carbon dioxide and how much carbon monoxide you measure from burning of a sample. This is just called combustion analysis. You can go back and figure out what the carbon and hydrogen empirical formula of the material that you're analyzing was. I mean, this is 20 years before the discovery of the electron, folks, okay? This is contemporary with the discovery of the light bulb. This is like the 1890s, okay? It tells you how far ahead of time this science was that these people were doing. So their elemental formula came really close to cannabinol, but they didn't quite get it, but they called it cannabinol on the paper. And then later in the 20s, in 3 or 4 back-to-back papers in 4 consecutive years, a British chemist named Sidney Kahn, who was actually, I think he was an Australian chemist, but I think he ended up at a British university, figured out the empirical formula of THC and figured out, for the most part, the structure. And this is all before Todd and Adams. So this is prior to Todd and Adams, man. They had this shit fucking figured out, dude. And this is fucking crazy shit. So then when Todd and Adams came along, the thing that messed up, I think it was more Adams than Todd, because Adams in 2 years published about 30 papers on his isolation of CBD and THC and what he thought their structures were. And remind yourself that they didn't have HPLC, they didn't have NMR, they didn't have all the modern methods of instrumentation that the later chemists that follow, like Meshulam and myself, have. So it's just so great for us now to be able to understand that history and understand where all this stuff came from. And so this is way before Meshulam. And so what complicated Adams's assignment was, as we know, there's a configuration of the double bond in THC called delta 9. And if given the opportunity, delta 9 undergoes what's called an isomerization over to delta 8. And delta 8 we hear a lot about today, because there's a lot of people who are using Meshulam chemistry to convert CBD over to delta 8, because delta 8 is the thermodynamic resting spot for that double bond. You know, when you're looking at the chemical structure of THC, it looks like chicken wire. You know, there's kind of like in that north piece of chicken wire, there's kind of like a double bond, and where that double bond resides is whether or not it's delta 9 or delta 8. And if given the opportunity, it likes to get away from the benzene ring, so it likes to move from delta 9 to delta 8. And it's favored just on an energy profile by itself. So
you know, Mark, that when you find archaeological remains that were high THC or even moderate THC, it's often found as delta 8, because the delta 9 is gone or converted and the delta 8 sticks around.
Yeah, I've described it before on Hash Church, go back and do our homework, as kind of like a roller coaster, right? And at like delta 9's at the top of the hill, but delta 8's at the bottom of the hill. And once delta 9 goes to delta 8, it doesn't go back. It's like it's the more thermodynamically favored resting point. And your observation there, Sam, totally speaks to that. So anyway, and again, delta 8 and delta 9 by most HPLC methods can be separated. So you can separate and you can distinguish between those two isomers. There's a lot of talk about this online because there's concern about hemp-derived delta 8 on its quasi-legality, and that's a whole different ball of wax. But to just go back to the Meshulam story and Adams, is if you go back and look at Adams's work, it's all, he doesn't know where that double bond is, and so he puts it, I think, in the 9 position, but I think his methyl assignment was wrong, or they just didn't have all the structural data that, you know, Meshulam and others had later in the 60s after NMR was invented. And then when HPLC was invented, I think right away, like right after there were commercial systems, the paper I have, in fact, Marcus, I believe we talked about this on Hash Church too, because it was a group of Canadians that did it. first characterized the HPLC separation of the cannabinoids and I believe the terpenes of cannabis. I think that was a Canadian group that did that.
When did GC start being used, Mark? Do you know?
Yeah, and GC was around the same time. So it was important for like all these chromatographic methods that they actually have the packing materials. And so what made HPLC work was the column. What makes the column work is the stuff that goes inside the column. Well, check it out. That was invented by a guy named Jack Kirkland, who I actually had the unbelievable honor of meeting at one point. Jack used to work at DuPont many, many years ago, and he left when they splintered off Hewlett-Packard, which became now Agilent. And he was a kind old guy, I mean, really nice guy, but they invented macroporous silica, which was required in order to make the packing material for these columns, and that enabled the whole HPLC thing to exist. And when they did that for GC, so gas chromatography, rather than dissolving the material, what you're doing is you're again going through that elaborate sampling process where you're weighing out the sample, you know exactly what it is, and then what you're doing is you're injecting it into a injection port, which is a very hot plate, and on that hot metal plate, when your sample hits it, it's instantly vaporized, and that vapor now travels through the column. And so rather than a solution traveling through the column and separating things based on polarity in the GC, what you're doing is you're basing things separation on differences in boiling points. And so your most volatile components are going to come out first, right? So as they percolate through the column, your terpenes come out, and then your cannabinoids come out later because they're your higher boiling stuff, because gas chromatography is based on separation, based on boiling through the column, which is basically just kind of like a maze that the compounds have to get through. And then like HPLC, there's a detector on the other side of that column that lights up and makes a peak every time a compound comes out. Whew, that's a lot. We went through GC and HPLC.
That was a lot, but very well said, and people appreciate that. That's good information on a Sunday morning.
It's cool because, you know, I'm getting a lot of inquiries, Mark. People go back and they watch Hash Church and they want to know about like things like this. I'm going to reference this church just because people will know it. Oh, what is HPLC, or what is?
You know, one thing I'd have to say is that
HPLC is really important for measuring your cannabinoids, and GC is really important for measuring your terpenes. And the thing about GC, remember, you're squirting it onto that hot plate. On that hot plate, cannabinoid decarboxylation happens instantaneously. So you're not going to get a measurement of your cannabinoid profiles in terms of what you're going to see in your HPLC, because in your HPLC, you don't see decarboxylation. So
I'll add it in the comment section as well, Mark. So when people come back and
what was that?
I said I'll add it in the comment section that you mentioned, that the breakdown between the differences and a little bit of the history.
Are there any questions, class?
I was going to say, Mark, when I had that GC in my garage, I found that a lot easier to use than the HPLC. Was a lot more technical, a lot more prep work, a lot more time. Where just putting it in the side and heating it up and putting it into the machine itself.
Again, there's two types of analysis. There's qualitative analysis where you're looking to qualitate something, and then there's something called quantitative analysis where you're just looking to find out how much of something is in there. And sometimes just a yes or no decision, you want to just get a quick shoot on the GC and you want to just see your big THC peak and maybe a couple other peaks, and that's fine and dandy. But if you need to correlate it or measure it, and especially measure it because now you're going to take that stuff and put it into, say, I don't know, MCT, or you're going to make some type of product that has to be dosed at a particular label concentration. I don't know how you do that without having HPLC internally,
Mark, question about things like Orange Photonics, these, I can't remember. There's a few other different
Yeah, the
products
wizard.
like this that, you know, I dream of walking into my hemp fields and just like plopping it down and being like, yeah, let's go grab all these samples. How realistic is a lot of this stuff?
Yeah,
for a
those
lot of
just aren't
viewers
very
out there? 'Cause
accurate. I mean, it's not that they're not accurate. They can only give you a level of precision that's good for, you know, if you're making a decision on whether or not to take a crop out of a field, you could probably use one of those, but you can't use that to basically use those numbers in, say, like the dosing of a product to meet a label requirement. No way, because you're just not going to have the level of accuracy. It's plus or minus 2 or 3%. That just doesn't, you know, like I said, that's not even ballpark. That's exit at the ballpark's results. That's not close enough.
Yeah,
So,
I don't find them very accurate at all.
When we did all the bar lab work for both GC and HPLC, because we had both, we always had to first dehumidify the sample down to almost zero humidity, moisture. And so if you don't have it together, you don't have it together.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a great point, Sam, and this is probably, again, a potential source of that 101% error that you're seeing, which is that if you're not drying the material, and there could be water there, as we know, you know, biomass, and there's Alec. Okay, we get the authority in here to tell us about it.
So this sample, though, just so you're aware,
is what's called hygroscopic, which means it'll absorb moisture from the air. And certainly, like if you take biomaterial that's been dried and you reintroduce it to a moist, ambient moisture environment, it's going to draw in moisture, and that's going to affect the weight of what you're trying to measure down to the 100th of a milligram. And if you're really trying to be really accurate, it has to be dried to the point of zero water every time. And if it's not, you're going to have a little bit of squish in your data.
So
right,
that
Alec?
material was bone dry. It was just straight THCA, you know, mechanically separated. I mean, you're talking long presses. I mean, exorbitant.
Right. Send me a sample. No, I'm only kidding.
I would, but yeah, I appreciate your insight on that.
Hey, you know, I think the Fed has something bigger on their mind these days.
So. It does things to my head when I put that into the market and I have to put that on the label.
But here's the thing, you know, like with THCA, I mean, this is just a real kind of cool thing. So you could melt THCA at a lower temperature below which it decarboxylates at.
Yeah.
So think about that for a second. You could melt THCA into a liquid before it'll decarboxylate. So if you have a melting point apparatus, that's a wonderful way to see how pure your sample is, right? And in fact, you know, you can, in my melting point apparatus, I could do side-by-side samples, you know, where you can do maybe another recrystallization or multiple recrystallizations, try to recrystallize that stuff to 99.9999% and do side-by-side melting points and see how sharp your melting point is. And
sounds like you need to do my testing.
Melting point apparatus are pretty cheap, and I think you can buy them. I don't think they're that expensive, but it's a great indication for crystals like CBD isolate on purity.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like poor man's HPLC, just to tell you how pure your stuff is.
Hey, welcome to Alec. Mr. Alec must have heard us chatting. I don't know if he's still there. I see a blank spot where his camera was, but he definitely was here for a bit. So we'll give him a welcome.
He connected telepathically, right?
That's it. He did. He felt his ears burning. He was like, I think those guys.
Yeah. And they're doing the testing.
Talking
about testing for the Emerald Cup, so you know he's the authority.
Right. Remember the day he came on Hash Church and he was like, he had just done the Emerald Cup and he's like, I kind of feel like the Grinch who stole Christmas.
We loved him for it because we could see through the talk and the lies. There he is. He's moving around again. because now we had real science to see through the bullshit and the hearsay and the conjecture. Science ended it. And yeah, Alec felt bad because he kicked a whole bunch of people in the groin because they all fucking used, pesticides and things they shouldn't have been used, and they got caught. So it just was surprising, I think, the amount of numbers that, Alec and them found at SC Labs, that people thought that they could get away with. So, shame on those people for trying to compete with tainted product, and good on Alec and them for actually catching them using real science.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know how widespread that issue in water hash was really known, right? I mean, Mark, we talked about it on Hash Church, and at the time, I did a little poking around on the internet, but it wasn't universally known that if your cakes aren't fucking dry, they're going to start molding within hours, right? I mean, this is just like a biological process that you just cannot stop. And you need to keep your shit dry, right? I mean, that happened, I think,
or frozen.
But didn't that whole revelation wasn't known in the hash community, was it?
Well, it kind of got learned this way. First, there's a lot, I'm not going to go over the entire history, but at a time where I was doing this, let's just say there was almost nobody online on the internet promoting this process. And I made a massive mistake. I made the mistake that I would take the bubble, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, and I would end up, leave it in patties, let it, so you think it's dry, but then it's really not dry. You roll it into balls, you get this really beautiful marble. But if you're getting that marble, that always told me, that hash is not dry yet. It's gone through stages of drying, and then you're breaking it open, releasing the lighter color to the darker on the outside, and mixing it all up into a marble. And what happened with an enormous amount of the earliest water hashes made from bubble bags, at least from 1999 and upwards till about 2003 or 4, we weren't drying the hash properly. It just wasn't being dried. So it would do this buttering thing where it would just start to kind of fall apart. And when you crack open a ball and smell it, you'd have that funky smell where you were like, there's something not right going on in that hash. Like, that's a guarantee not right. That took me years of promoting sieving and microplaning and trying to show people, like, don't put it into a pile, don't put it, then people like Nick T came out and was like, oh, you can dry hash in like a day and a half, but not really going over the fact that he was in Colorado in this dry, arid place versus the Pacific Northwest. If you're telling someone over, and vice versa, for me to be telling him, hey, it's going to take you at least 7 days to dry your hash, my God, it would have no terps left in it. So we learned things like that by being different people promoting these similar things in different places. We learned that the hash acts differently. And which you mentioned earlier in regards to hydrophilic, when the hash is sitting out and there's tons of moisture in the air, trust me, it's never going to dry. It'll literally get more wet by pulling that shit out of the air. So that's where the desiccant came into play. And that's why I always wanted people to dry on something like a food grade thick cardboard before freeze dryer, something for home use that didn't cost thousands of dollars. People were already bitching about the cost of bubble bags. This was 22 years ago, and they were a couple $100 for a pair. So they certainly weren't going to be going out and buying a $8,000 freeze dryer to take this to that level. It was for personal. And if you did it right, you could get the hash dry. In the Pacific Northwest, without using a desiccant, it was very, very difficult. Grading it or sieving it very, very thin so it wasn't piled up and holding, itself inside itself again, sealing up that hash, because it would do that even freshly sieved. So, these are definitely things that we learned.
The point that I was making, and I think Alec is here now, and maybe he could comment, is that I think our discussion about this on Hash Church with the data that Alec presented and this whole awareness now, I think was a outcrop of that episode that Etienne was talking about, which is that, I hate to give you the bad news, but so
totally.
Alec, is that right? I mean, is that the first time that data that supported microbial contamination of improperly dried hash is a widespread phenomena?
I apologize. Was that for a question to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. I mean, it's been very fascinating. I feel like through incredible kind of vehicles like Hash Church, I definitely feel as though it kind of helped to push kind of forward a lot of the consciousness and understanding of these kind of shortfalls or pitfalls with certain types of extraction, whether microbial kind of overgrowth is a potential because of the presence of moisture, or in the case of pesticides, the way kind of pesticides carry over and concentrate in extraction processes, especially ones that aren't necessarily water soluble. But yeah, I mean, I definitely big up Hash Church, just understanding how many people kind of that are passionate enthusiasts of this plant and of perfecting that have kind of gained and learned from this avenue. But yeah, I mean, but Mark, I tuned into the live YouTube, and I heard you talking about HPLC and GC, and yeah, so much respect to you. I mean, I'm not in any way. I mean, I'm one of the co-founders of SC Labs. I'm not a scientist myself. I'm kind of more from the cultivation kind of cannabis side of front-facing side of our business. But I'd like to think I've become a trained parakeet in being able to at least grasp, understand, talk, and convey some high scientific kind of perspectives and understandings that I've come to learn, and we've come to learn from trends from testing over the last decade.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that you mentioned Hash Church, and before we were talking about kind of like the Grateful Dead scene, and it's like, to me, man, I mean, how lucky are we to live when we did? We traversed a millennium, okay? We were born in another millennium. And we were alive during Miles Davis. We were alive during Bob Marley. I saw Jerry Garcia in a building, I think almost 200 times. It's just, to me, it's like we have a really unique opportunity to really bring together this passion that all of us have for the plant, and people who really love where this industry is going. When I say industry, yeah, there's a lot of things that I don't like about it, because there's like suits and ties and money and having to raise tons of money. But, on the other side of that, you have an industry that has standardized testing. You have people who understand that HPLC is not just something that you're paying for at the testing lab, but I have to have that at my production facility too, because how the hell do I know what I'm making if I'm making extracts that I don't do any internal testing before? So, I mean, we use third-party testing all the time, and it's always to validate things that we've already tested 10 ways between now and last Sunday. We know what that result's going to come back when we send it over to Defense, the third-party lab, because we've already tested it a whole bunch of times, and we're making sure that a tincture bottle or whatever, I mean, the right label information is coherent with, again, every best, analytical method that we have now. And we do have the luxury of standing on the shoulders of these giants that came before us. And as you look at, all the cannabinoid chemistry literature, which is rich with just discovery made in an environment with incredible headwinds where you can't do research on this plant, and still people did research because they knew how important this plant was. And it happened in other places other than the United States because of it. And that's fine. I mean, the chemical literature for a scientist like me is my crystal ball, right? And I could look into that crystal ball and I could see what can be. And only because my eyes grew up. I mean, I used to play with Legos when I was a kid, right? And not like Star Wars Legos. And these were just the blocks. Here's just a bunch of red and green and blue blocks. There were no directions. And I think nonlinear thought and how kids are able to really put together in a nonlinear way things helps people understand, that, we're just part of this continuum, and we're all lucky to be alive right now because, man, where the plant is right now, and we're at the brink of a new administration that's going to get in there and change a lot of the laws that are wrong. And still, we need to be proactive, and I'm sure ATM will agree with me that there's still a lot of things that are wrong that need to be fixed. We need to be able to get records expunged. We need to be able to get away from this, all the things that prohibition did to drag down our society. And to me, it's like the Grateful Dead was this thing that was going along and that was just going to, again, eventually expel its fruits into something that was going to be bigger than it ever imagined it would be. And that's where we're at.
So are you saying you don't play with Star Wars Lego anymore?
No, I'm just saying that the Legos that my kids grew up playing with were different than the Legos that I had when I was a kid, right? I mean, we were lucky to have the Legos where I can put 2 little rubber tires and a wheel in there, you know. But
hey, you guys, my dad just walked in the door, so thanks very much. And I've had such a great morning talking with you all. Keep hashing, and I will see you guys all again on the next church.
Love you, Johnny B.
See you later, Johnny B.
And I'd love to build on a part of Marcus's, Dr. Mark's points he was just making. You know, that's one of the most fascinating things, and I mean, I've described it kind of in effort, kind of across different episodes of House Church that I've been able to be part of. But you know, just learning from the data, you know, and the trends in the data over hundreds of thousands of data points over the last 10 years, you know, it's really so much brought me such excitement and optimism about where this is going. Although there's all these efforts and corporate predator capitalism trying to come in to try to pillage and, you know, kind of take advantage of this plant or profit out of this plant. But there's so many built-in teachings and lessons that you either have learned or you have not even, you don't even fucking have a clue, you know, excuse my language, but, you know, kind of, you know, in service to this plant in various methods of hash extraction. I mean, there's so much to learn, and you know, kind of, if you've, you know, and just using cultivation as examples, if you've never gotten hit by broad mites and spider mites and root aphids and whiteflies and, you know, all the potential pests, how do you know how to deal with it? And so I just feel like there's this built-in like tribal knowledge and awareness that those that have been in service of the plant for so long have, that is actually a massive competitive advantage in a coming global regulated market, especially, you know, and on this idea of how do we, you know, kind of as thought leaders in the community really help drive, you know, kind of the way this is all shaped up, you know, because in California, you know, we're seeing so many efforts, you know, to kind of just monocrop and just blow this plant up. But, you know, I feel like the level of hubris that people come into this plant with thinking they're just going to throw money at it and kind of just crush everybody is proportional to how quickly face plant, you know, off the starting line. You know, and, you know, just, I'm just witnessing everybody invest so much money into the worst spaces in the state to grow that are just right in the deepest heart of, you know, the industrial ag kind of legacy. And, you know, in areas like Salinas, which, you know, I'm in Santa Cruz, California, and, you know, Salinas is, you know, kind of a 45-minute drive. Salinas, you know, and that area is, you know, the salad bowl of the United States, you know, like 70-80+% of the, you know, vegetables and produce kind of produced out of that area. And so whenever you have cultivation kind of happening in the heart of these areas, you know, it's like that area particularly, you know, it's not just one crop that they're growing like almonds where there's a set regimen of organophosphates and pesticides and fungicides they spray each year. It's a rotation of all these different crops, from brassicas to greens to kind of, you know, in each crop planted throughout different times of the year, sprayed with different levels of pesticides and fungicides. And so I feel like, you know, just on that idea you were talking about, Mark, with the, you know, the crystal ball, you know, from the data, I almost feel the same thing. I almost see like this Back to the Future sports almanac of, you know, just seeing who are, you know, coming potential winners and losers of where it's going. And you know, just, I feel like as long as, you know, we have this eternal vigilance to kind of not have things kind of be deregulated or allow the deregulation of this, you know, because they put in so much regulation, and I think there's, yeah, tons of it, taxation, all kinds of stuff that is incredibly important that we work to kind of reform and change. But, you know, with regard to the testing regulations, you know, I feel like it's a barrier of entry. It's a leveling of the playing field. You know, once this goes national, you know, you can't just plant 100 acres of cannabis in the middle of in the middle of the heartland of agriculture, like the millions of acres of Dust Bowl across the Midwest. You know, it's because there's massive bioremediation has to occur, you know, before there can be any potential to grow cannabis that's going to compete on a national market, that's going to pass and be able to, you know, be made available to the public, you know, with these levels of public health safety standards. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
What I see, Alec, I mean, I think these are all great points. I think Collin might be able to comment on this too as well, as programs open up out in the eastern United States, out in the states this side of the Mississippi, is that I think they recognize the importance of the testing industry has to kind of like be a sister industry to the production industry itself, meaning that they need to have two sets of businesses in the state. They need to have the producers, the people who are growing, extracting, making formulated products and dispensing those products. But we also need to have third-party independent testing lab that needs to be completely different set of people doing those business operations and not the same set of people, you know. And I think there's always a confusion, I think, that people always have about testing, that it's somehow it's some panacea and it's some box. Oh, well, they'll test it, everything will be tested. It's like, again, I think that it's really naive to even open up a production facility where you're going to be spending, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to put into developing a licensed production facility without having internal analytics. And if you don't have internal analytics and you're just going to send all your stuff over the fence, well, then you're going to have prohibitively long production timelines, because in order to formulate your distillate, you need to know what your distillate tests at. So what are you going to do? Test your distillate, then wait around 10 days for that result to come back before you formulate the distillate? No, you want to test it right then and there and have testing capabilities all throughout the selection of your biomass. You know, you don't just take a COA from some farm. You should be testing the biomass yourself. Any type of, whether you're buying crude or whether you're buying distillate or whether you're buying any process intermediate, yeah, it's going to show up with a COA, but wouldn't it be great to do the testing yourself? And what we found, I mean, this is interesting, Alec, because again, I don't usually say this with a lot of people, is that some testing labs are, again, they're in this high throughput mode and they're just sort of like, you know, grinding out test samples.
Never failing. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, you know, how you run your HPLC is kind of like how you drive your car in a way.
Well, and if I may real quick to it, and I apologize, Collin, I think you were about to jump in, but just I'd love to make a point real quick, because you know, that's another thing we're seeing from California and some of the leadership, that the way California regulated the, you know, test, or just as far as testing goes. Because
let me just finish my car analogy, because I think it's funny. So how you drive your car is how you run your HPLC. So if there's a road with a bunch of potholes in it, you ever drive down it really fast and you hardly hit any potholes at all, right? Because you're driving down so fast that you never hit any of them. But when you drive really slow, you hit every fucking pothole, right? That's
it's a beautiful analogy.
From my point of view, Mark, it's like having this awesome instrument here and not being able to know what it sounds like. You know what I mean? I'm like, it looks so good, and I know what I'm playing. I know I'm playing the right chords and in the right key. And I know exactly what's happening, but you're missing that call and response that as a formulator, as a product developer and a hash maker, I yearn for that immediacy, because that to me is the art, and that call and response is necessary for myself to really make decision making that's actually educated, rather than waiting around. I wait around. I mean, I've waited long times, guys, like months, to just be like, well, where's the sample? This stuff has just been sitting on ice for me, essentially. It's a hurry up and wait situation in the regulated market sometimes, and it becomes actually frustrating, I think. And to your point, Mark, yeah, if you're constantly throwing things over the fence, you're at the mercy of them. So it's really tough.
I couldn't agree more. I apologize for any interruption there.
No, don't be. Never apologize.
I appreciate these points. And I think so much of the foundation though is quality analytics and to actually do the work to learn how to drive or to play that instrument, you know. And I was going to hit on 2 points, one around kind of internal testing, and then the other one on kind of third party testing. Because, you know, if you're going to put people through so much regulations and burdensome testing, you know, for third party certification to ensure for public health and safety, you know, you have to be overly regulating the analytical labs doing the testing. Because if you don't have, you know, substantial kind of auditing and ongoing data package review processes from the regulating body on the labs doing the testing, you know, then there's no point in even having testing regulations on people. Because if labs aren't held to a certain standard, and, you know, they can just, you know, and people know, you know, there becomes an economic disincentive to work with good labs for good reasons of accuracy and precision, you know, to more chase high THC numbers, or to just always go through these labs because they would pass, you know. But, you know, kind of as an example, just with terpene testing, you know, whenever we run a terpene test through our GC, you know, we go, you know, the runtime through our column is about 90 minutes per sample, you know, so that we can ensure that there's full separation for every individual peak. Because if you rush it and you have the 15-minute runtime because you're trying to do this high throughput thing, then you can see it in the data being completely wrong because of the misidentification of co-eluting compounds that, you know, you identify as eucalyptol or something that's not even ever showing up in any substantial amount in cannabis. And so I think, you know, the foundation of good chemistry, good science, good analytical chemistry is doing the work and validation to ensure that you're actually identifying what you're looking to test, you know. And you know, I completely agree. I think the partnership between, you know, third-party labs like ourselves and those that are in cultivation or manufacturing is, you know, especially as groups are bringing on their own internal HPLC and GC capabilities, it's to develop that relationship and partnership in helping to, you know, you know, show that we're, you know, same page. You know, third party testing labs, but also individual groups setting up labs. Because, you know, if you're formulating off of a bad method, you know, then you know, there's no ability to be consistent or
that's
actually have
another
success
problem
in comparing that to third party testing.
Yeah, like to your point that you just made right there, the differentiation from batch to batch, or the same batch tested unknowingly to them, or maybe they do know because it's batch number related, but they do come back differently at times, and we've addressed that. And yeah, I think good things take time, and that's the other half of it, is that you're illustrating the biggest point. I take a lot of time in my craft and doing what they're doing in the lab. That's the same way. If you cut current corners, you're going to see it in the data, and you're exactly right. And I don't know what the answer to that stuff is, but it's, you know, I know from my point of view, because of all the ceilings that the lower ceilings that we have in the particular state that I'm in our facility, it's just, it becomes, I just want things faster. It's only human though, I guess, you know? So I think it's good that we can push labs to think about this, but to your point, there's a give and take.
Yeah, and, you know, in California for compliance testing, you know, we're at 2 to 3 days. So I mean, you should never, you know, be satisfied with 30 days. You know, and
wow.
Yeah.
See, I would be happy with 2
years
to 3 days
to get there.
That would be incredible.
Yeah,
and you know, it's taken us a long time to get to that, but you know, but to the quality conversation, that's where I think California, you know, I think a lot of states that have regulated in the past haven't done their job of regulating labs to the should be. And so what happens in California, you know, eventually, as every lab is fully licensed, no lab has their full license currently. You know, every lab that's currently licensed is operating on provisional license at most. And by the end of the regulation, there's so much ongoing auditing, accreditation, and the Bureau of Cannabis Control in California has this process known as data package review. And so at any time, the BCC can reach out to a lab, and they come from client-driven complaints on inconsistency in quality, or from just random audit. But they'll request a data package. It's about 12 gigabytes of data the lab has to get to them by the end of the following day. And so, and it's all the calibration data, quality data, who touched it, when every aspect of every test that was done on that batch. And then the BCC has a panel of PhD analytical chemists that then essentially grade these data packages and review and and scrutinize these data packages. And if they see any issue with the data, they'll reach out to the lab. You have to the end, they'll ask you a question, and you have to the end of that day at 4 p.m. to answer that question. And based on your ability to answer the question, they'll either say, all right, cool, you're good, or they'll initiate an investigation. And so once they initiate investigation, they begin doing deeper dives and auditing the lab's quality systems and different batches of data. And from their findings, they'll issue a tier 2 or tier 3 violation. Tier 1's like a fix-it ticket. Tier 2 is a suspension. And there's, labs have been suspended for 5-6 weeks, currently in the state of California from this type of, and then the top tier violation is a tier 3 violation. And that's like identifying, because tier 2 violation, you're suspended until you can demonstrate to the BCC that you've corrected the action that they found a violation in the quality of the data or in the method development or validation. So tier 2 is a suspension for however long it takes to fix and remedy the violation. And then a tier 3 violation has happened to, probably about 10 labs already in California. And that's a full revocation of the license because they found fraudulence or gross negligence, just juicing numbers, like, kind of tweaking their methods to never see pesticides. And whenever the tier 3 violation happens, they essentially do a consumer level product recall, going back to the beginning of the date of the investigation began. And there's a few labs in California that happened to, and the most horrifying part of it is, the producers and processors and manufacturers of batches are the ones that take the biggest hit in those cases, because they have to go through these product recalls after they already, got cashed out, counted on, invested their money back into their business, all of a sudden product recall. And so, we really pride ourselves in kind of, working to be a leader in the space of what we do. And all testing regulations as brutal spot, not just because we're in the business of testing, but as a cultural on a cultural kind of sociological level, we see testing as a way of evening the playing field. Again, back to the other part of the conversation where if everybody is on the same account held, there's it's David can compete against Goliath. And then once we're all on the same level of quality and data, then we can begin to actually really help people tune their methods in their internal labs, and kind of the whole industry can progress. But yeah.
What's your take on TAC? Do you, Mark, Dr. Mark, and also you, Alec, and everyone here? What do you guys feel?
TAC, what do you mean by TAC?
Well, how the market is really looking at TAC as a mechanism in retail.
What is
it's
this?
The 30% club. It's the 20% club. It's the these types of terms that have been historically thrown around. What do you think they mean in terms of science?
I'm not familiar with. I've never heard of TAC before at all.
Total active cannabinoids.
Yeah. Oh, wait, the total lack active cannabinoids. Okay.
Total active cannabinoids. TAC.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, because I think that's the whole thing. Everybody's been so hyper focused on THC in regulated markets as the sole indicator of quality, and it's really had an effect on the market in a huge way, not only because bad lab data exists where numbers are just juiced and it just throws off the whole thing, but also because when I think TAC combined with total terpene content and the relative ratio is really one of the best numbers you could ever judge or value weed on, right? Because you could have a 30% TAC, total active cannabinoid, kind of containing strain, but if you had less, if you dried it and cured it like terribly, and you volatilized all your monoterps, you could have, say, less than 0.2% total terpene content. So now you got 30% total cannabinoids. You got less than 0.2% terpenes. That's like a 90 to 1, 95 to 1 cannabinoid to terpene ratio. And in my opinion, that's what really begins to define what biomass is. Everybody's using that word. In my opinion, biomass is when material that has no other value because the terpenes are gone or it's old or degraded, to where then distilling it is the only real option to capture value from that material. Whereas if there's a bunch of terpene content because preservation and ongoing, because a lot of people are farming cannabis but not terpenes, right? And we see from the time of harvest, even if you dry and cure in the most ideal conditions, there's 60 to 80% of terpene content lost. So I mean, even if you harvest in the middle of the day versus the night, by going to field harvesting in the middle of the heat of the day, you smell the terpenes in the air, they volatilized into your nose, right? And so I think, and so going back to that analogy, right? If you had a strain that was 15% total active cannabinoids, when unfortunately in these regulated, licensed, legalized markets, can have deflated value because they're not above 20%, right? If it was 15%, but it had if it was cultivated optimally, harvested in the middle of the night around the full moon, dried, cured, preserved under ideal conditions below 60 degrees, or more, whatever, you can see that in the relative ratio of cannabinoids to terpenes. And so all of a sudden you could have 3.5 to 5.5% terpene content in the dried flower relative to 15% cannabinoids. That's like a 3-to-1 cannabinoid to terpene ratio. So all of a sudden, reality of the entourage effect or the ensemble effect and how much the effect is going to hit, because the limonene is 3% versus 0.5%, right? So I think there's something really big there in the future, because it's paying less. I mean, total active cannabinoids I think is much more important than total THC, right? Because what other cannabinoids are in there and what amounts, right? But total active cannabinoids in relation to total terpene content, the relative ratio, that's more of a measure to actually judge.
So what's a good measurement for you that you see in terms of terpenes?
I mean, we see anything, I think,
because you see so much. That's why I'm asking. I feel like it's good for the viewers and even myself to, because we've arrived in this regulated market. We have a lot of terms and things that are being thrown around every day, and it all amounts to art and commerce, to me at least, at the end of the day. And how they quantify that is just there's a lot of opinion around it.
Well, so we can thank our friends in Italy again for helping another piece of the puzzle become unraveled, right? So not only did they discover the THCP and the CBDP C7 cannabinoids, so they've now discovered the C6 cannabinoids, right? And I posted the link in our chat, Marcus. I don't think I can't post it over in the
I can try to do it right now, Mark.
In the YouTube chat, if you guys want to put that in there. But so this is the cannabinoid structure, but rather than having the C5 tail, it's got a C6 tail. So it makes sense that all of these things are in the cannabis that we've been smoking for years. The C6, the C3 are the varins, the C7 are the Ps, and the C5s are the ones that we're analyzing routinely, but constantly finding that we're not characterizing the full amount of what we have. Well, these are all the little pieces that are being put in place.
You're saying that these compounds are affecting the high? I doubt it. They found it.
No, I didn't say they're affecting the high. Who said that? I didn't say they're affecting the high.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood.
Well, good thing, because he doesn't agree with that.
well, wait. This group of Italians did show that the compounds are active, I think, in a mouse paw pain assay for nociceptive pain. I read the paper really quickly, but it's just another, again, it's fascinating because as analytical chemistry is happening and as varieties, I think, if I remember correctly, the name of the variety was the FM2. If you look at the paper in Nature, and I think the paper is widely available, it's not like you need some subscription to a journal, so all you need to do is click on that link. But you'll see that they have the CBD version and the THC version that they isolated in very, very small quantities. But it's just, again, part of what the plant is making. The plant's making these compounds. It totally makes sense that the biosynthetic pathway exists. And the thing I'll leave everyone with is that now that they've basically been able to make cannabinoids in yeast, they can now genetically engineer a yeast just to make specifically now this one with the C6 tail or with the C3 tail, and then combine them later on. So, you're not limited by just plant genetics because, they know the biochemical mechanisms and how to basically engineer yeast to make these compounds.
How valuable do you think that's going to be long-term, Mark?
Oh, I think it's really valuable. I think it's incredibly valuable. These compounds are incredibly medicinally active, and making small, subtle changes to the structure seems to have impact on the biological activity. So I think those small, subtle changes to the structure, just even if you compare THC to THCV, or if you compare the ones in the CBD family. I mean, all of these compounds basically are active in the same way. The question is what do the subtle changes in the structures do to impact their safety and efficacy? And I think for the most part, that's widely unknown. So an open field worth study. Right?
No, absolutely. I agree. 100%.
I would think so. I mean,
more studies.
Changing in regulation, yeah, it does invite all the corporate aspects of this, but it also invites opportunity to uncover incredible value propositions, which is that these molecules, which, the plant has basically taught us are biologically active, and oh yeah, by the way, they're also safe for humans, have all kinds of myriads of biological properties that are, we need to discover and exploit in terms of, manifesting it for human health and not taking all this pharmaceutical crap that they're trying to sell us.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've been really freaked out about the franken-cannabinoid, kind of future idea.
Prevagen, what the hell's in Prevagen? Some ground up jellyfish? There's commercials on it all over TV. I see it on the nightly news. I see it all during, Prevagen. It's like some, herbal supplement that old people are taking, and it says it improves their memory. I look at these commercials, I'm like, why aren't these people smoking the ganja? It'll improve their memory. What the fuck, man?
They don't want to say goodbye to the anal leakage they get from their pharmaceutical
Yeah, but Prevagen is totally not FDA regulated. It's just herbal flying under the radar of some herbal supplement bullshit with some nice, whiz bang marketing. It's snake oil, for Christ's sakes. They say, I don't know, it improves your memory. They say a key ingredient is derived from jellyfish, so it's interesting. I don't know. Just wondering,
I'll stick to lion's mane.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you send Sam some Bitcoin, he'll get you some.
Yeah.
But what about my beaver anus? I love my beaver anus. I want
and I'm really
curves.
fascinated. Yeah, I'm really fascinated too with kind of and I'm curious too, Sam, if you have any thoughts on just because a lot of in medicinal mushrooms like cordyceps, chaga, all the different kind of medicinal mushrooms, it seems like there are triterpenes that are some of the major compounds behind their medicinal values. And so just this future of combining these triterpenes with cannabinoids, and whether there might be some interesting, unique kind of shifting of the way that cannabinoids or these terpenes are binding the receptors or having effects on the system.
Are you asking me that?
What do you think about that? Is that
yes, he is, and you better have the answer.
I hardly know what to say because I never did any real science on mushrooms, cannabis together, other than personally enjoying both. But I really don't know what to say.
Well, I'll go back to the
terpenes that are found in mushrooms, whereas cannabis, I've studied them extensively.
We'll send you the paper that Josh shared last Hash Church, which is
I downloaded that paper.
Did you check it out?
No, I didn't read it, to be honest.
What paper?
Check it out. I think it'll pull you in. It's called Traversing the Fungal Terpenome. I'd love to send it to you as well, Alec. It's a good one.
Again, another thing that I think the hippie and Grateful Dead culture got right. Psychedelics is a way to deliver your mind from the oppression of what's going on in your life. And it's useful for all kinds of folks that I know who started going down and doing the ayahuasca down in South America, who claim that it basically saved their lives, that they would not be alive today if they didn't go down there 2 or 3 times a year and have this experience. And the other thing I wanted to say is that, man, isn't it just great to see kind of psychedelics follow in the wake of cannabis when you look at policies that are being opened up in, say, like Oregon and Denver, where now you start basically saying, okay, you know what? Yeah, everything's going to turn into a big parking lot at a Grateful Dead show. I mean, it goes to show you again, I don't know if there is, an equivalent to like religion or what replaced religion for a lot of people in their life, but whatever that experience was that delivered them. And the dudes who were psyched all week, they were going to see the Grateful Dead Friday and they had a bag of shrooms and then they ate those shrooms and then Garcia and the boys came on. That was like a moment for that guy.
Well, that was the rapture. That was the true experience of the rapture.
That was the rapture.
No faith required.
Right. That delivered that individual.
Go ahead, Alec.
I so much love and appreciate where this is going. So for one, there's a book that you should check out if you haven't. It's called
the Immortality Key?
Immortality Key. Yep, Immortality Key. It's about 100% same page. Yeah. It's about the root of so much religion.
Dude,
obviously kind of
it's exactly what I was thinking.
It's fucking mind blowing. Yeah, that's awesome. And because the other part of especially over this last year in 2020 is just such a crazy heavy year. So the fear is thick. And the mental coronavirus is like over. So everybody's been freaking out like we're in the apocalypse, right? And if you look at the definition of the word apocalypse, it's the time of revelation or the great unveiling. And on that idea, time of revelation or the great unveiling, it kind of feels like we're in that right now. It feels like, and Mark, I love what you were talking about with cannabis, and because I feel like cannabis and hemp are the leading horsemen of this apocalypse in a way, that are charging and kind of leading this wave of, providing this great plant that's helping to alleviate suffering and provide empowerment and kind of and all the tools for the new economy and green revolution that's to come with this plant and so I feel like it's helping us to gain clarity in this time of revelation. Right. and the way it's leading the path for these other plants and entheogens and ancient medicines to have their way forward and through this pathway. I feel like they're the other horsemen of this apocalypse.
This giant full circle. I mean, when Mark said it's like we're all basically the story of the Immortality Key in a nutshell is that there was this unknown, unnamed religion that had to have had something major going on in it because it wasn't about faith. It was more like this ancient Greek methodology of thinking and sciences and physics and exactly. And that elixir that they were drinking, and then him having to go to Barcelona to find proof that there was ergotized grain that was made into this elixir, and just really incredible story. And then you got your paleo Christians, and they come along and they kind of remove all these sacraments, replace it with the blood of Christ and the bread ritual, which is very just all of a sudden there's no rapture, there's no experience, it's all faith, and you're just sitting there talking to the priest who controls it all. And you can kind of see how we're coming out of that after so many millennium, really, like coming out of that experience, getting back. And cannabis is, of course, the leading horseman, like you mentioned, and cannabis you have, okay, we can take care of, it's very much reminiscent to me of the Bhagavad Gitas and the way they look at yoga for the body and meditation for the mind. You've got cannabis, really, I'm sure you can say it's for the mind and body, but then you have this psychedelics that are for now, outside that 5 cents prison, spirit, exactly, like completely removed from, go ahead, Mark.
Alec, a question I have. So as psychedelics become less regulated and more prevalent in kind of recreational ways, are labs like SC, are you guys doing testing of psychedelics, or is there testing of psychedelics, or what would that look like? I mean, is that again an industry that has to kind of parallel the developing of psychedelic products or mushrooms or whatever, people are going to be ingesting or eating?
Totally. Yeah. So real quick before that, just to wrap that other thought too, because on the like immortality key and everything, I'm really fascinated by this new kind of field of archaeochemistry, where they're kind of scraping the insides of these ancient found kind of, artifacts, of like chalices and also of pape, like, the kiripe, which is a tool that you administer, these South American, Brazilian, Amazon kind of powders, through your nasal cavity, right? They found one in Chile, scraped it, did some archaeochemistry on it, and found 5-MeO and NDMT bufantine, which is, essentially, and the tool carbon dated like 7,000 years ago. And so essentially it's predating kind of the use of this tool to administer YOLO or Vilca, which are two kind of, really powerful spirit medicines, through your nasal cavity to your nose, and so, and it's just fascinating how deep it's going, kind of, and all the compounds they're finding. But to your point and question on testing, I'm really excited about, because right now, it's I mean, Prop 215 set, in California set forward a way where labs could, had legal ability, or had at least a state proposition of coverage to be able to take, these federally illegal Schedule I substances, and, order analytical reference standards and begin testing. So there was a little bit of coverage. Like right now, there's no coverage, right? So, all the compounds, that we're talking about that are coming to be liberalized or legalized are all currently still federally controlled substances,
Right. Which
and so
complicates matters, right? You can't,
yeah,
because you have to have standards for it, like I said.
Yep,
And
to
the thing
build
is,
methods,
it's like,
right?
it's like all those compounds, unlike the cannabinoids, I believe all these compounds are water soluble. You don't necessarily have to have oil solubility. But the nice thing is that if they're the phenethylamines, they have a nice chromophore, so they're good candidates for HPLC detection. And again, I have like no clue, like maybe you guys know, or maybe just throw out for discussion. Like when we look at cannabis, like this beautiful picture of the hash church variety we're looking at, we see something that's got like 20% cannabinoids on that flower material. What's the percentage of psilocybin on mushrooms? Does anyone know? I mean, is it like 5%, 10%, 20%?
Well, so that kind of leads to finish that thought though, because I think there's a lot to to be discovered, just like kind of what's happened with cannabinoids and testing cannabis whenever that kind of came to be. But in Oregon, Measure 109 passed, which legalizes psilocybin, and now the state has the next year and a half or two to develop licensing and regulation for licensed and legalized psilocybin.
Which
and so there's going to be 3 licenses.
Would include analytical testing standards.
Yep, there's 3. There's
production. This is how you make it, and this is how you produce it.
Yeah, totally. Well, there's a cultivation license, there's a therapy center therapist license, and then there's an analytical testing lab license. And so, cool. the Oregon Health Authority is going to be the ones regulating and licensing the testing labs. And we're already regulated by the Oregon Health Authority to the highest of degree for cannabis up in, we have a lab up in Tigard, just south of Portland. And so we're really excited because we're hoping that kind of gives us just a bit of a shoe-in to be able to start doing that testing, because we have a group that we're going to be working with that has over 120 unique psilocybin geographical discerned varietals that they're looking to have us begin to develop testing to identify the characterize or whatever to the chemotype of all these different mushrooms. So I'm really excited to see how that comes about. But until then, you have to have a DEA Schedule I license.
Won't it be interesting when you walk into the dispensary or the mushroom dispensary or whatever the hell it is someday, and people are buying based on hey, that's got 20%. This has got 15. That's got 20. You know.
And the chemovar. Oh, this one's got baeocystin and norbaeocystin. I'm grabbing these.
Yes, exactly. I was just about, you just finished my sentence. I was just going to bring up norsilocin or norsilocin. Yeah. Yeah, but there's certain varietals that have kind of their own MAOIs in them. And so it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. But ultimately, one of my biggest passions in life is around ethnobotany and entheobotany, and to be able to build off of what we've learned and been able, because cannabis, for what it's worth, represents probably one of the most difficult matrices that analytical chemistry has ever had to approach or test. And so to be able to have learned, and so it's an incredibly difficult process to learn and to actually get right because of how much, 30% resin content up to that, gunks up all of the HPLCs, GCs, mass specs. And so to be able to develop methods to resolve that matrix so that you can do the testing accurately and repeatably is such an endeavor. And, I think those labs that do the work and learn how to operate on such level are going to be some of the highest performing analytical labs in the world. Because we're not testing dirt, testing water salt, a lot of water salt, they're relatively straightforward, but cannabis has just presented this very difficult challenge to analytical chemistry. But from there, being able to learn and ultimately test all these other coming, incredibly important plant compounds, is one of my excitements and passions for, where I'm going personally.
So Alec, then when I start the Traversing the Fungal Terpenome live show on my channel here, which is going to be a similar one to Hash Church, you're in, right?
Yeah.
All in.
Thank
you so much. That's such a beautiful that's such a beautiful name of the paper too, and I appreciate that, turning me on to that.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Mark.
Isn't that just funny that, again, not to go back to the Grateful Dead, but so as a young deadhead, you would have your shrooms and you'd have your bag of weed, right? So in a way, they kind of knew.
Absolutely.
Knew, right?
They totally knew. What are you talking about? Forget about kinda. It was like 100%. Are you kidding me?
So, one thing takes you one way and another thing takes you completely in a different direction.
I will mention again, because I love saying Traversing the Fungal Terpenome. It's just awesome. But I did start a Facebook group called Traversing the Fungal Terpenome. And we've been sharing all sorts of edible mushrooms and psychedelic mushrooms and identification tips and tricks and stories and books. And it's actually becoming a pretty cool little community. So if you are on Facebook, if you're not and you hate Facebook, I don't need to hear about it. It's all good. But if you are, join the group, check us out. We're in there, and it'll be the same name of the show when I hopefully get it together. So I'll try to send out an email here soon to Alec and Dr. Mark and a few other people I've been thinking about for this particular show. It's going to have some different people on it for sure. And we'll be talking about, not just mushrooms, but, a variety of the psychedelic plants and fungi that we.
Yeah, Collin, I got your comment last week, on Hash Church. You were like, oh, I wish Mark was here because he lives near Kennett.
Yeah, you're near Kennett. And and also I was I'm a big fan of psychedelics, and I was reading about, 5-MeO and the frog and hunting frogs just from, it's fascinating how the work that was left behind led to synthesizing that. And perhaps we can get a couple of friends of mine to come on and talk about that as well as. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that area is going to get reinvigorated again?
You mean in fungus?
Yeah.
Well, fungus is fungi is so diverse. They have their own goddamn kingdom, for Christ's sakes, right? I mean, they're their own fucking thing, dude. They're just like, they figured out how to make very complex molecules and everything from yeast to filamentidaceous fungi. I probably just said that wrong, but the fungi that are in our guts, the fungi that are behind Marcus. My family in upstate New York used to be avid hunters and seekers of the so-called hen of the woods, which is sort of domesticated here down in Kennett Square. Phillips calls it the maitake mushrooms, which they grow on towers that are made, I think, of a PVC pipe, and they have some kind of meshing where the nutrient around it and the flower bodies are kind of growing radially from the nutrients that flow through this thing. And they really only get to only so big when they're grown commercially. But when you find those in the wild, those things could be as big as the trunk of a Volkswagen. I mean, I've seen these mushrooms be so huge, and they're delicious. They're wonderful pickled. They're great just in any mushroom recipe, you know, whether you're making soups or whatever you do with mushrooms. I mean, it's a wonderfully edible mushroom, hen of the woods.
I like to gobble them. Gobble, gobble.
There's a couple restaurants of noted variety in Vermont called Hen of the Woods, and there are 5-star restaurants that are absolutely worth going to. So if you're ever in Vermont, Waterbury, go to the Hen of the Woods. It's a wonderful restaurant.
Sweet, I'll have to check that out.
Listen, I want to. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to add one thing about psychedelics, Mark, and you'll love this. Is that, you know, again, if you go like the fish tour. Where fish tour kind of got kind of crazy is when people started doing powders and like MDMA and other shit kind of came in there. And to me, it's nitrous. Like the true, right. All that other crap kind of like was this toxicity in the scene that was, now we're using the word toxicity to mean toxic. And to me, it's like the only true thing was mushrooms and, you know, LSD if it was good LSD. Now that's a big if, but, you know, but to me, we stayed away from everything else because I just saw that tear people up and make idiots out of people and eventually lead to people who are no longer here.
And change the vibe of the whole scene. Like it really did change the vibe. When I showed up accidentally,
you were going, right, Mark? Right?
I mean, I showed up in 93 and it felt like it was still pretty legit. It felt like this is OG. Legit. Yeah, it felt pretty OG. It seemed like it was around, I don't know, maybe 97 or not. Yeah, maybe even 99. There was a little bit of it in 97 on the East Coast, but yeah, it is what it is. They made it through. They're still alive. They're rock stars. They had to have some stories, but it was heavy for sure. The whole powdered drug thing seemed unnecessary, but you always have a choice.
Terrible. Humans love white powders. I don't know what it is.
Well, humans love, it seems as though, you know, not to get too heavy into it, but, you know, if we can agree on that it's likely that we came from somewhere, maybe a source, maybe we were all one energy and we're going all to this one energy. And this particular experience is a splintered, fractured ego version that you get to be you and you get to do whatever you want and you're not a part of everything yet, you kind of are, but you get to make mistakes and you get to make bad choices. And some people are here to make bad choices. They want to make lots of bad choices. And guess what? That's the freedom of life right there. They get to do that if that's so what they choose to do. Other people, we try to make good choices and we end up making some bad choices along the way. So it all seems to be a challenge around every corner. It's like, should I eat the mushroom or should I snort the cocaine? And I mean metaphorically, because I'm not a big cocaine snorter at all. But metaphorically, there's always those two options. It's kind of like, should I take this choice over here or should I take this choice over here? And they all tend to lead us to one place where we all get to end up, which is 6 feet in the ground. Unless you're getting
like Prince, you know,
like everyone, Prince, we're all going to die.
What a shame, again, that he had a doctor who was feeding him with all that toxic shit. And as talented as Prince was, and it's terrible to lose someone and now to just have his musical legacy around. But, you know, just, we've all lost loved ones to substance abuse. And it's terrible. And you'd think, man, if they just would have ate some mushrooms and smoked some weed, they'd still be here.
Well, you know, and I really appreciate both those two thoughts. You know, I feel like I've been on a mission, kind of, especially, you know, kind of doing as much work as I've been doing over the last decade with other plant ceremonies, medicine work, kind of ayahuasca, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I feel I'm on a mission to help my friends learn how to do better drugs, you know, and to be, you know, I feel like we have an obligation in this life to be spiritual forklifts for each other. And I feel like there's a lot of really like basic, like low vibration, you know, vibes that are just overly consumed and leveraged, you know, by some of, you know, our closest friends and family, you know, and so to be able to help, you know, in that way, educate and like live by example, you know, of how much they've benefited us, I feel like we can hopefully help kind of, you know, that 100th monkey effect of, you know, getting off the bad and onto the real medicines that are actually quite fascinating.
My wife and I, and we were with a couple other couples, and we had dropped some acid, and we were sitting at this one outdoor restaurant, and we were just laughing up a storm. We were just having such a great time. We were having such a great time that the table next to us said, "We want whatever they're drinking." So I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it kind of like, it radiates. People know, they're like, those people are extra happy.
That's when you bring them a tiny little shot glass, and you're like, "Here you go." They're like, "What the hell is this?" It's like, it's about 250 milligrams. Here you go.
Yes.
Well, listen, it was a great conversation today. I completely enjoyed it. I did want to finish up one thing which Alex just meant in regards to, we need to be spiritual forklifts for each other. And I think that is a very good term. I really like it. And what I wanted to mention about that was, you know, I've been following this guy on YouTube for a while, for quite a while now. He's a rapper, freestyle guy. I've mentioned him a few times. Harry Mack is his name. He used to rap on Venice Beach, and he was at one of the High Time Cannabis Cups. And he's got a video out right now on his channel. It's called Making an Emotional Connection Through Freestyle. It's from 2 days ago. I'll share it in the chat. I would definitely implore everyone to go see that, because, man, what he does in that video is he becomes a spiritual forklift for the guy right at the end. So this heavy set guy comes in at the end. He seems pretty drunk, and he's kind of happy, but he's really sad at the same time. And the way Harry connects with him and freestyles about what this guy's going through from having a 2-minute conversation with him is absolutely phenomenal. It'll definitely bring a tear to your eye. And I thought, what a great way to end the Sunday show. With that, if I thought it wouldn't breach a copyright law, I would share it right here and now, but I wouldn't want to take the chance to lose this episode of Hash Church, because it's been such a great one. I want to thank everyone for coming out. Superly appreciate all the panelists who really offer up their time to come on here and share and talk and create a dialogue. And to me, that's a level of consciousness that I want to be around. I appreciate each and every one of you guys and gals. And of course, we love and appreciate all the people who spend their Sunday mornings watching us, the usually 400 to 500 of you that watch live, that are in the chat holding it down. We really appreciate all of you guys. Couldn't do it without you. That is a fact. And I'm going to try and do another Hash Church next Sunday. Going to put the invites out, see if we can't get back continuing along this vein of conversation. And you will see the new the mushroom show, the Traversing the Fungal Terpenome, come out here in the next month or so. Just give me some time on that. So awesome that everyone came and showed up. Thank you all so much. May the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later. Hash Church 3.0, episode 13. We're out. Peace, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Mark.
That's what's up.